Opening, Minato became my brother. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Blue/1 Style 2 Moves. 2 seconds passed in the blink of an eye. After all the shurikens were shot out, the ground in this area was completely covered with dense shurikens, leaving no place to stand. During the thrilling dodging process, Yuli, with his agility and extraordinary reaction speed, first avoided a part of the oncoming shurikens by moving left and right, and then decisively took off into the air in midair. He constantly adjusted his posture, deftly dodging the shuriken that whizzed past one after another. The connection between each action must be seamless, and the slightest hesitation or mistake, no matter how insignificant, would result in being hit by the hidden weapon. However, even so, there were still some shurikens that could not be avoided. Yuli had no choice but to grit his teeth and choose to take the risk, trying his best to dodge sideways to reduce the injuries as much as possible. 1 minute passed, 2 minutes passed, 3 minutes passed. Yuli kept kicking away the shurikens that blocked his way forward, while moving forward with difficulty. Gradually, sweat dripped down from his forehead, soaking his clothes. At this moment, the shuriken shot from the wall became more and more dense, and the space available for movement around became narrower and narrower. Every move requires precise calculation, which is a huge challenge for Yuli. There was a gleam of brilliance in his eyes. He knew that he could no longer sit there and wait for death. He had to use his real skills. Yuli's eyes flashed with lightning, and he was obviously ready to perform ninjutsu. He originally hoped to pass this first level with his excellent physical fitness, but it did not go as he wished. It seems that I still underestimated the difficulty of the root organization's test for the trial takers. After all, it was an organization created by my grandfather with great effort. After sighing helplessly, Yuli's whole body radiated subtle lightning. Since it is impossible to completely avoid this overwhelming attack, forget it. I will not hide anymore and face it head-on. Yuli suddenly pulled out the sharp tang sword on his back. In an instant, an electric sound like thousands of birds singing in unison suddenly rang out, deafening and echoing throughout the room. Lightning. Release. Torrent. He took a deep breath to calm his agitated mood, then raised the corners of his mouth slightly, outlining a faint smile. Although the wounds on his body were still stinging, this pain made his nerves more sensitive. Boo-hoo-hoo. Boom. At this moment, the bright lights around suddenly went out without any warning, and the whole room instantly fell into pitch darkness. At the same time, a cold voice came out from a loudspeaker in a corner not far away. The first round of testing is now entering phase 2. In this endless darkness, the only light still on above the head seems particularly dazzling at this moment. Countless shurikens flashing with cold light swarmed towards Yuli from all directions like a group of disturbed bees in those dark and deep eyes. There was only a large area of thick black shadows, just like a dense swarm of bees. Chaotic and disorderly, blocking all angles and directions that Yuli could dodge. Strands of chilling light bloomed in his eyes, and the large number of shurikens and kunai that came flying at him were like a sudden downpour in early spring. Endless and unavoidable. He couldn't completely avoid all the shurikens, but Yuli didn't need to avoid them completely either. Lightning flashed in his eyes, and the tang sword suddenly tore through the space, making a vibrating buzzing sound. Yuli was seen flying rapidly in the air like a ghost, sticking closely to the 3-inch area marked out, waving the tang sword in his hand with great force. Blue/1 Style, 2 moves, each of whose sword strikes carried with it an extremely sharp momentum, as if to tear the void apart. He first slashed forward fiercely, drawing an arc in the air. The shuriken that flew into the arc were instantly shattered, making a series of crisp and pleasant sounds, and then these fragments flew backwards at a speed even faster than when they came. Yuli's eyes were as focused as an old monk in meditation. After a successful attack, he leaped into the air without hesitation, followed by a gorgeous turn, and swung the tang sword again, drawing an arc as bright and dazzling as a crescent moon. The arc was as fast as lightning, accurately knocking down the shurikens that were heading straight for his back. However, this test was clearly not over, as more shurikens rained down on him. At this moment, Yuli exerted force on his waist, twisted violently, and swung upwards with a third arc. This strike was even more powerful, with unparalleled might, knocking away all the remaining shuriken. Ding ding ding. Countless shurikens were defeated by these 3 arcs and fell to the ground helplessly. Yizi took the opportunity to cleverly avoid the remaining attacks like a flexible loach and passed by those flying shurikens with just these 3 lightning-fast sword strikes. He easily repelled most of the shurikens coming from all directions. The entire action was clean and smooth, without any drag. After landing, Yuli quickly put the tang sword back into the sheath. The whole process was so smooth that people could not help but marvel. In the monitoring room, Orochimaru stared at Yuli's figure on the screen and the shurikens scattered all over the ground. After a long silence, he turned to look at Danzo and slowly asked, "Is there a ninja in the route who is so good at swordsmanship?" From his words, he seemed quite surprised at the strength displayed by Yuli. Although it was a question, Orochimaru's tone was very certain. He was not good at swordsmanship and had no way to teach Yuli in this aspect, but with the entire route as his backing, Yuli would naturally not lack these things. However, Yuli's swordsmanship was obviously not from the same family. He knew that Yuli's swordsmanship was good, and the previous blue/style also amazed him. However, in Yuli's style, he saw the shadow of many swordsmanship families. Forget it. Who is this person in front of me? It's Danzo. Do these ninjas dare to run in front of Danzo and make a scene? He is too kind that he is not skinned alive just now. Yuli swung out a circular slash in 3 directions, and Orochimaru saw many figures of swordsmanship families in it. It seems that there are indeed some ninjas who are good at swords in the route. Seeing Yuli use this move, even Orochimaru couldn't help but turn his gaze to Danzo beside him. Danzo smacked his lips and said, "This is indeed a move that Yuli figured out by himself, called blue/. But I did find him a lot of sword teachers, but they basically just gave him some pointers. He said he needed to find his own way and not stick to one school, otherwise a family secret technique." Danzo was secretly very proud of Yuli's brilliant achievements. However, Tsunade on the side behaved very calmly. No matter what amazing results Yuli achieved, she didn't seem to be surprised at all at this moment. She was holding a sealed scroll in her hand, which contained some precious medical books and necessary medical supplies. Chapter 52, Orochimaru and Yulin number 039, Night Talk. Tsunade was holding a sealed scroll, which contained some medical books and medicine she had developed. I forgot to bring him a gift for passing the exam this time. After thinking about it, Tsunade just brought some things from the hospital. At least it was a token of my appreciation. Orochimaru turned around and looked at Yuli, who was putting away his sword in the test room with a vigilant look on his face, and smiled. You'll get ready and continue with the remaining 2 tests. After speaking to the route members who were standing nearby waiting for instructions at any time, Danzo and his companions left the control room and headed for the second test site. "Master, the first test has ended. If you are able, please follow Marwan at the door to the second test site." Lee's nerves were tense until he heard the sound coming from the speaker. His stiff body relaxed a little and he let out a long sigh. After the test, Yuli began to feel the pain from the cuts on his body, but he remained silent. The vitality in his body rushed madly to the wounds. Soon, the wounds healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. He nodded slightly towards the speaker and then walked towards the door. Next is the second test, which mainly examines Yuli's reconnaissance capabilities and intelligence analysis capabilities. Facing this round of challenges, Yuli made full use of his outstanding stealth and teleportation skills, and analyzed and processed various complex intelligence at a very fast speed. After some efforts, he successfully solved a series of tricky traps and problems and successfully passed this assessment. As for the last test, it was originally intended to test the testee's ability to work in a team, but due to Yuli's own strong strength and leadership, this test turned into a test of his personal leadership ability. The entire test process lasted for 2 full days. Yuli went all out and finally completed the remaining 2 test tasks. So far, his true level has been recorded, and the relevant information has been accurately recorded in the files of the root organization. Of course, these detailed information about Yuli is highly confidential in the entire Konoha village. The number of people who are authorized to access it will not exceed 10. It can be said that it has reached the top secret level in general. The results of Yuli's test this time were very good. At least in the eyes of Orochimaru and Danzo, Yuli's current strength is considered to be at the elite level in the root, not to mention that he is still in the stage of rapid strength improvement. In a few years, Yuli will truly become a core member of the root and even Konoha. With this, Yuli also had his own code name Windbird and officially joined the root that night. Orochimaru took Yuli out for a stroll in a rather rare manner. He is not so idle on weekdays. The streets were bustling with traffic, and there were many shops with a wide variety of goods. Orochimaru, wearing a high-collared black robe and a loose purple belt around his waist, strolled lightly and gracefully through the streets. Ninjas kept passing by along the way. When they saw Orochimaru, They stopped and saluted to show their respect. Orochimaru just nodded slightly in response, then turned around and looked at Yule, who was busy with his hands, and said, "Joining the route was actually decided by your grandfather from the beginning. Ever since Danzo changed his attitude towards you and regarded you as his successor, you should have known that joining the route was also something you were destined to experience." After a pause, Orochimaru continued, "Although we also consulted your personal wishes at the time, I still hope to know your true opinion on this matter." His golden snake eyes flashed with a deep light, as if he could see through everything. Orochimaru was not surprised at all that Yule had successfully passed the rigorous route test. On the contrary, he would have been greatly surprised if Yule had failed the test. After all, in his eyes, Yule had enough strength and potential to cope with these challenges. Yule paused for a moment, pondered, and looked up at the teacher, who was looking at her. "Although I was a little surprised at first, this is not a bad thing, right?" "Oh." Yule saw that Orochimaru was a little confused, smiled slightly, and explained, "The normal team of Konoha handles more positive missions, which is suitable for Kushina and Hisui, but not so suitable for me." After a pause, "Especially Kushina. She is really a very kind person. She is too kind to be a ninja. Her world is black and white. If you force yourself to carry out a mission, it will not be good for her. As for Hisui, when I have enough strength, I will let her get what she wants." Lee paused for a moment before continuing, "My background has long destined me to have no way of escaping those things hidden in the dark. Since it is already destined, what is the point of resisting? It will only cause trouble for myself. Teacher, you know that I hope to live well. In order to survive, my desire for power is definitely not weaker than yours. I am the same as you, and I am not afraid of any means to obtain power." Before he finished speaking, Yuli grinned and chuckled, his eyes slightly narrowed, revealing a hint of tenderness. At the same time, without stopping his hands, he quickly put a red bean ball into his mouth, and thick red juice slowly flowed out from the corners of his mouth. At this moment, Orochimaru couldn't help but have an illusion that what he saw before his eyes was not red bean juice, but bright red blood. It's really interesting. Don't mind using any method. So, teacher, what do you think is the true meaning of this world?" After speaking, Yuli stared at Orochimaru deeply, as if he wanted to see through everything in the world through his deep eyes. Then, Yuli's eyes became unusually firm, and his voice suddenly became somewhat steady and powerful, ringing in Orochimaru's ears. "Teacher, isn't this the meaning of leaves and roots? Just like a towering tree needs a part of its rhizome to quietly take root in the ground, let me take on this difficult and important responsibility. I hope, and I am happy about it, not just Kushina and Hisui, but also Minato and Shizune. Let them stay on the soil without distraction, freely enjoy the nourishment and comfort of the sun and rain, fully display their talents, and thrive." Prior to this, the Orochimaru team had successfully completed many difficult missions, covering a variety of areas, including material transportation, intelligence reconnaissance, and secret assassinations. Most of the enemies they faced were ninjas from hostile forces or powerful samurai, but no matter what kind of opponent they faced, Kushina and Hisui never showed any cowardice or hesitation. However, fate is always full of variables. Just at that time, a seemingly ordinary task revealed the different personalities of the three people, or in other words, completely exposed the differences in their concepts. Chapter 53, Watching You Walk into the Future. It was also that mission that made Yuli determined to let them stand in the sun. This mission is to kill the third person in the Moon Country Silver Moon Consortium, the Jiulikiao clan, regardless of gender or age. There was a bone-chilling chill in Orochimaru's eyes, as if it could freeze the air around him. This is not only a bold attempt, but also a severe test of the character of Yuli and others. Such a cruel task of genocide is simply unheard of, and unheard of for Yuli and the other two. "Yes," he responded 3 times in a row, his tone obviously much heavier than usual. Orochimaru stared at the people in front of him coldly. He was a completely different person at this moment. He did not take the initiative to take this mission. Instead, Danzo personally approached him and explicitly designated Yule and others to carry out the mission. Danzo needed to verify that Yule could complete the mission, or in other words, Danzo was testing whether Yule was suitable for the route, but Orochimaru didn't care about it. He was even a little curious about Yuli's choice. When his eyes swept over Kushina, Orochimaru revealed an indescribable helplessness in his eyes. She would not show the slightest mercy in killing the enemy, but what if it was an unarmed child? Kushina's eyes seemed to be somewhat evasive. She was not sure if she could kill those children, women and children. However, Since the mission had been accepted, unless there were special circumstances, there was no way she could return it for no reason. Under the leadership of Orochimaru, the team quickly set off and headed for the Kingdom of the Moon. They were exhausted along the way, but everyone was worried, not knowing what fate was waiting for them. The Kingdom of the Moon, adjacent to the Kingdom of Flowers and the Kingdom of Dew, is home to many so-called sorcerers. However, in the eyes of other countries, they are just a copy of ninjas, and sorcerers do not cultivate their bodies, but only their magic. After all, it is not mainstream and it is difficult to be accepted by the upper class. This time, it was the fifth figure of the Silver Moon Group, Shakamu, who spent a large sum of money to find the root from the black market and asked them to assassinate the Gyuli clan. The Silver Moon Group, the largest group in the Kingdom of the Moon, was jointly established by 7 families. After that, the families worked together and gradually made some achievements, but as time went by, the originally close-knit families gradually fell apart due to their own interests, especially now that the original founders have passed away one after another, and the friendship between them has further disappeared. This generation's Kuri family head Kuri Akatsuki and Shaka family head Sagamu both fell in love with Akunsha, a Japanese female performer who specializes in traditional performances, and Kuri Akatsuki, with his family's stronger strength than Sagamu, finally won the beauty. However, Shakamu was a vindictive and petty person, and coupled with a recent dispute between the Gyuli family and the Shaka family over a newly discovered mineral vein, he got carried away and sent people directly to the black market. The result was that Orochimaru and his crew arrived in the Moon Kingdom. When Danzo first received this commission, he was a little confused. No, the Kuri clan had to be destroyed just because of this, so fierce. After a thorough investigation, it was discovered that the Shaka family had long been hollowed out by the largest family in the consortium. This family was a family of sorcerers and possessed more miraculous powers than other families. Even Sagamu was a puppet supported by the first family, but he didn't know it yet. Under the instigation of his subordinates, he did such an extreme thing. The original reason was simply that the minerals in the ore veins discovered by the 2 families had a soul-destroying effect, posing a threat to the warlocks of the first family, but the 2 families did not know it yet. In order to nip the threat in the bud, the first family mobilized their own puppets, which changed the fate of Gyuli's family. What? PFFT, boom, boom, whoa. Whoa whoa, bad guys. You are bad guys, Mom. What's wrong with you? Mom, teacher, really, I have to. When Kushina saw the crying child lying on her mother, she was deeply conflicted. For a moment Orochimaru's eyes were cold, without a trace of emotion. Let's do it. Don't forget our mission. Holding the kunai tightly in her hand, Kushina's knuckles turned slightly white due to excessive force, and her face was unusually pale, as if all the blood had been lost. Not only her, but also Hyuga Hisa, who was standing beside her, had a very ugly expression at the moment. They originally thought that they had completed so many tasks and their hearts were strong enough to complete the tasks even if they forced themselves, and they could become qualified ninjas, but the scene before their eyes made them a little numb. Those little children, who were only a few years old, with fear and hatred in their eyes, seemed to have no ability to fight back. However, it was precisely these weak lives that put Kushina and Minato Hisaha in an unprecedented dilemma. Facing these powerless children, they were unable to do anything. That night, Kushina and Minato Hisaha stood there in a daze as if they were under a spell of immobilization, their eyes empty and lifeless. With expressions of disbelief on their faces, they just stood there, unable to bring themselves to take action, and watched Yu Li waving the tang sword in his hand expressionlessly. One knife, every swing of the knife will bring a burst of blood. He ruthlessly killed every target within his sight, no matter if they were men, women, old people or children, no matter whether these people were capable of resisting or not. Yu Li did not hesitate at all. Amidst the wailing, cursing and pleas for mercy, the tang sword in Yu Li's hand never stopped reaping lives. Blood kept dripping from the tip of the sword, staining the ground beneath his feet. Red, the clothes on his body had already been soaked with blood, as if they had turned into a bloody shirt. 103. This represents 103 originally alive lives. There are 6 children among them, the youngest of whom was born not long ago and is the youngest child in Gyuli Kiao's younger brother's family. That day, Kushina and Minato Hisaha, who thought their hearts were as hard as steel, stood there and vomited continuously, as if they wanted to vomit out all their internal organs. In fact, they had not eaten for several hours, but now their stomachs were churning like a river, accompanied by waves of twitching and cramping. And the spasm spread quickly from the back to the coccyx like a tide. They could never convince themselves that their weapons could not be swung at those young pupils. The annihilation of the clan was too much for Kushina and Minato Hisahito to bear. Since then, they fell into a long silence, and even did not talk to Yuli for several days. Whenever they saw Yuli, they would involuntarily avoid his gaze. Those pupils that slowly turned scarlet were like a pool of blood. After this incident, Danzo made up his mind to arrange Yule into the root organization. After all, whether it was Yule himself or Kushina and Hyuga Hisaha, this mission had already shown that they were not compatible with each other. Looking at the bright moon hanging high in the night sky, Yuli raised the corners of her mouth slightly, revealing a faint smile. This bright moon was indeed out of reach, but when she looked at it, Yuli felt an inexplicable sense of peace in her heart. Mom, I will live well, no matter the cost. Shaking his head, Yuli didn't continue thinking about these things, just treating them as strange thoughts that came to him occasionally. Orochimaru didn't say anything else. He thought carefully about the scene when he first met Yuli and the words Yuli had said to him during their time together at the beginning. Yuli's language was undoubtedly a systematic other language, but strangely, after Yuli refined the chakra, he slowly forgot that language. This discovery made everyone who knew about this very curious, but no matter how we discussed it, there was no conclusion. In the end, it could only be attributed to the fact that Yuli's memory was damaged, and she selectively forgot those memories when the pupils become empty. The lights of thousands of homes that were originally clearly visible in front of the eyes gradually become blurred and unreal. At this moment, Orochimaru seemed to travel through time and space and return to a certain day in the past, the day when heavy rain was pouring down. In the rain, a young child took the black dog's life without hesitation in order to survive, and just 1 second before the stone was about to hit the black dog, Orochimaru felt a slight tremor in his heart, which was the perception from his own kind at that time. He knew that this child named Yuli was destined to be a carnivore. They all have cold blood, indomitable perseverance, and an extreme desire for power. Keep moving forward towards your goal, Yuli. Stride forward fearlessly. Orochimaru raised his head slightly, staring at the silver moon hanging high in the night sky. The cold moon cast a cold light, like a layer of mysterious gauze covering the earth. He stood quietly, looking from afar, and unexpectedly felt an indescribable sense of sacredness. Yuli threw the last meatball in the bowl into his mouth and chewed it vigorously. As his mouth moved, his originally white teeth were dyed bright red by the juice of the meatball. His mouth was stretched wide, revealing an odd yet childish smile. The scarlet red on his mouth was glowing faintly in the moonlight, which contrasted with the smile in his eyes, giving the whole person an indescribable temperament. Teacher, I will, Lee said softly. Her voice was gentle but full of determination. At this moment, the surrounding noise seemed to fade away, and only Orochimaru and Yuli were left in the world. They were immersed in this tranquility, as if they had forgotten all their worries and disputes. Orochimaru looked at Yuli in front of him and couldn't help but wonder what kind of changes this child who was brought back from the heavy rain would bring to Konoha village and the entire ninja world in the future. He couldn't help but smile softly. He was always full of expectations for the future. The fruits of victory belong only to the living. In this quiet night, Orochimaru and Yule enjoyed this rare peace together. They may not be a master and apprentice in the traditional sense, but in each other's eyes, they are the one who can understand themselves and accompany them forward like a tracks. Like, well, little sir, let me watch you slowly walk towards the future. I'm looking forward to. Chapter 54. Yuli is seriously injured. After that night, everything seemed to have returned to normal, and no one mentioned the incident again. Yuli, like a person who had evaporated from the face of the earth, quietly disappeared from everyone's sight. The next day, Yuli had his own mask, which was a white bird that looked a little weird. From then on, he hid himself in the endless darkness and devoted himself to the affairs of the root. Ever since leaving Kushina and Hyuga Hisaha, Yule's life has become extremely monotonous and boring. Apart from undergoing rigorous training, studying various knowledge and skills, and performing various difficult tasks every day, there is almost no other activity. Gradually, he appeared in the outside world less and less frequently, and as time passed, he began to fade out of people's memory. Danzo and Saratobi Hirozen continued to control public opinion and reduce Yuli's presence in the outside world. During the days at the root, Yule began to grow rapidly. As the gathering place of the dark side of Konoha village, Danzo also intended to let Yule slowly get in touch with these things. The ninja industry has never been bright and noble. Unlike Yule, who devoted himself to the root, the Minato team led by Jiraiya slowly became a star with their outstanding talents and unremitting efforts. Minato, Kushina and Hyuga Kyukazu quickly rose to become the best among their peers, even surpassing many older ninjas. Their names also appeared on the desks of various ninja villages. Their presence is becoming stronger and stronger, and now they are the brightest new stars in Konoha. They have become the celebrity figures created by Konoha. People need spiritual support, and young people represent hope in the future. Yule constantly absorbs nutrients from the roots of darkness, and Danzo creates perfect conditions for him to grow. Ninjas from the Hatake family, the Moonlight Clan, and other swordsmanship masters teach Yule swordsmanship. Orochimaru teaches Yule ninjutsu practice, exploratory thinking, and scientific research knowledge. During this process, Danzo continuously provided them with experimental subjects and experimental equipment, and was not stingy at all when he was alone with Orochimaru. To the root, experimental subjects are the least valuable things compared to Yule. Minato and his companions stood in the sun, enjoying the wind and dew, becoming the top figures of the new generation of Konoha. This operation is to coordinate the conflict between Chuan's kingdom and Zishi kingdom. Good. Teacher, receive. In the blink of an eye, half a year had passed. During this half year, the tacit understanding between Minato, Kushina and Hinata Hisaho had become stronger and stronger. Excuse me, are you the messenger from Konoha? When they arrived at the capital of Kais province, the envoy of Kais province, who was standing at the city gate, saw Jiraiya and his three companions wearing Konoha ninja costumes from afar. Well, hello, I'm Jiraiya. These are my students, and they're here for a mission issued by your country. Okay, everyone, please follow me. My master has been waiting for you for a long time. Let's talk on the way. The envoy was wearing a light blue feather garment, which was embroidered with exquisite patterns with fine needlework, as if a group of light birds were dancing. He wore a crystal-clear jade pendant on his waist, which exuded a warm luster. He wore an exquisite official hat on his head, which showed his noble status. However, the messenger always had a flattering smile on his face, which made Kushina frown slightly. Jiraiya may have noticed Kushina's expression, or he may not have cared at all. This is also the social etiquette that ninjas need to learn. At this moment, he was happily chatting with the messenger, and he would laugh heartily from time to time. The capital of Chuan's province, Daming Prefecture. Jiraiya, I meet the daimyo. Konoha envoy, it's great that you can come here. The main reason I asked you to come this time is, Minato and others who were standing aside and listening quietly soon figured out the whole story. At the border between the two countries, a mine rich in silver was accidentally discovered. Faced with such a huge temptation of wealth, both countries wanted to take it for themselves, and thus the dispute arose. But how could the more powerful Zishi kingdom be willing to share the silver mine equally with Chuan's kingdom? Wouldn't it be better to use force to forcibly occupy the silver mine? Of course, the daimyo of Kais province was unwilling to watch his interests suffer losses. After careful consideration, he decided to give up part of his interests, take out 20% of the silver mine, and ask Konoha village to mediate the dispute. After all, for Kane's country, even if it lost some silver mine resources, it would not be a big deal. However, he just couldn't stand the smug look of Zishi daimyo. Therefore, as long as he could stop the ambition of Zishi country and prevent them from succeeding easily, losing some interests would not be a problem at all. And what happened next was, as everyone could see, that the daimyo of Kazal province was talking enthusiastically with Jiraiya, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. In the evening, the sun sets and the afterglow falls on the magnificent hall. The daimyo of Kazal sat at the main seat with a smile on his face, while Jiraiya sat leisurely on his right. There were seats reserved for Minato and others beside him, but none of the three of them chose to sit here. On the other side, all the ministers of Kazal were also present, and the scene was very lively at the banquet. Beautiful girls danced gracefully and sang melodiously, like nightingales. Dancers danced gracefully, like fairies descending from the earth. The sound of stringed instruments was endless, like the sound of nature, intoxicating. Jiraiya and the daimyo and others raised their glasses frequently, laughed and talked constantly, and the atmosphere was extremely harmonious. However, Minato and the other two hid silently in the corner, with a helpless look on their faces. This is not the first time they have carried out such a mission, but even now, they still find it difficult to adapt. Perhaps this is what is called a political mission. In the corner, just as Minato was sighing secretly, a figure quietly appeared in front of him. The girl was wearing a simple yet elegant and exquisite kimono, which was well cut, with smooth and natural lines, perfectly outlining her slim and attractive figure. Her steps were as light as the wind, and her gestures revealed a unique charm, as if she had walked out of a painting. Not only that, her soft voice was gentle and elegant, like a flowing spring, refreshing the heart. Lord Minato, may I ask if our Koisa's food is to your liking? The girl asked softly, her eyes as gentle as water, gazing at Minato affectionately. Almost at the same time, a person appeared beside Kushina and Hinata Hisaha, with eyes that were either shy or expectant. There were men and women around them, all of whom were people of the same age arranged by the king. This was just a casual move. If it worked, it would be a good thing. Even if it didn't, I didn't do anything, right? After staying in Kawase province for 2 days, Jiraiya took Minato and the other two to Zishi province, where the customs of the people were relatively simple. With the arrival of Jiraiya and his party, the daimyo of Nishiaishi province seemed very direct, compared to the socializing everywhere in Kazual province. He directly brought up the topic and told Jiraiya and his party that as long as they defeated the 10 most powerful samurai in Nishiaishi province, Nishiaishi province would agree to conclude a peace treaty with Kazual province, jointly mine, and offer 10% of the output. That day, the mission was finally successfully completed, and they set out on their return journey to Chuan's country for a short rest in the capital of Kawase province. Jiraiya would occasionally take time out to instruct a few people around him on the way of cultivation, patiently imparting his experience and skills. However, most of the time he was addicted to the gentle land given to him by the daimyo. Just like that, when Kushina could no longer bear it and was on the verge of losing her temper, this usually free and unrestrained teacher reluctantly left the gentle place of Kawase province. At the moment before leaving, Minato stared at Jiraiya, whose face was as pale as paper, with worry, as if he would fall down at any time. This scene made Minato terrified. Terrible. Time flies, passing by like a white horse passing by in a flash, and like the sand slipping through your fingertips. It is elusive since Yuli stepped into the roots. In the blink of an eye, he and his companions have grown 1 year older. The local conflict between Konoha village and Iwagakure village is becoming increasingly intensified. As more and more ninjas unfortunately died during their missions, it became increasingly difficult for both sides to control the emotions of the ninjas. The situation is falling apart at an alarming speed. The shadow of war is gradually looming, and a major war seems inevitable. On this day, Yuli completed the mission assigned to him in the land of Earth by Danzo, and returned to the route with his scarred body. This was the first time that Yuli had suffered such a severe injury since he came to the route, so that even his powerful self-healing ability could not heal the wound quickly. His body also became rapidly thin due to the injury, and he became skinny and bony, even thinner than when he first arrived in Konoha. Despite the unbearable pain, he still gritted his teeth and insisted on handing the secret scroll to Danzo. Then, his heartstrings, which had been tense all the time, suddenly broke, his eyes turned black, and he immediately fainted to the ground, unconscious. Call the medical team. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55, Treatment, Bond. In less than 2 minutes, a medical ninja team rushed over and quickly carried Yuli into the laboratory. This was a special treatment area set up specifically for Yuli. After all, Yuli was proficient in medical ninjutsu and had a unique physique, so he rarely received orthodox medical treatment. Because of this, those responsible for Yuli's treatment are usually the researchers at the root, who know Yuli's physical condition very well. At this moment, Danzo was standing outside the laboratory, staring through the window at Yuli lying on the hospital bed. Inside the room, Yuli's face was as pale as paper, without any blood at all, and his face was so thin that his original features could not be seen. His haggard appearance made Danzo's face even more gloomy and ugly, and he was in an extremely heavy mood. The mission this time was extremely important and confidential, and must be completed by the most reliable person, so he decided to give instructions to Yuli in person, to go deep into the land of Earth to gather intelligence. At first, Danzo thought that with Yuli's ability, it should be no problem to complete the mission, but who could have expected that Yuli would encounter the team led by Huangtu? Although Yuli has amazing talent, his talent has not yet been fully transformed into strength, so, after a fierce battle, Yuli was seriously injured and dying. However, what was amazing was that Yuli relied on his tenacious willpower and amazing perseverance to transform his flesh and blood into endless power to repair his wounds. Even so, at this moment, his intestines still had to be tightly wrapped with bandages to keep them in place to prevent them from falling out. Looking back over the past year, Yuli has gone through countless hardships and carried out a total of 40 difficult missions. And every time, He relied on his extraordinary strength to overcome danger and achieve his goals brilliantly, with a mission success rate of 100%. This kid, there is always a kind of ruthlessness in him. Not only is he merciless to his enemies, but he is also extremely cruel to himself. Whether inside the root or elsewhere, no one can deny Yuli's terrifying strength. This young master of the root is no longer respected by others because his grandfather is Danzo. He has proved to everyone with his own abilities, his own experiences, his own sweat and blood, he deserves the respect. This is one of the few bright and spacious places in the root, and it belongs to Yuli's research department. The atmosphere in the laboratory was extremely tense and solemn. Outside the nutrition cabin, a group of researchers in white coats were busy and focused. They were carefully adjusting the various medicines needed for Yuli's physical recovery. On the other side, several medical ninjas with medical bags on their backs displayed their skilled medical ninjutsu, carefully putting Yuli's exposed internal organs back into his body, and doing their best to repair his terrible injuries. Yuli was barely breathing at this moment, like a candle in the wind that could go out at any time, but these people's movements were steady and firm, without any trembling or panic. If they were not very familiar with Yuli, they would not have believed that the skinny, bruised and battered person with almost no intact skin and flesh on his body was actually the young master who was once lively and cute, gentle in character, and always liked to stare at everyone with his big eyes and affectionately call everyone uncle, sister, and aunt. Master is out on a mission this time. Alice, a researcher, looked at Yuli's appearance and couldn't help but sigh softly. Yes, but fortunately, the talent that the young master possesses has greatly improved his survival rate on the battlefield. Isn't it? Another person hurriedly comforted. You're right. Only a gifted person like the young master can withstand such severe trauma. But the young master's cells are burning so much, but he is not affected at all. It's so strange. Nan, is the nutrient solution ready? The leading medical ninja turned around and asked Nan, who was preparing the nutrient solution. It's ready. After you finish your work, you can put the young master into the nutrition cabin. The man called Nan also had a look of heartache on his face, and he responded quickly, while various potions kept appearing in his hands. A masked medical ninja nodded and sutured the last wound on Yuli's body. Several people worked together to gently put Yuli into the nutrition cabin. Look, the young master's body has begun to recover on its own. Sir, please come in. At this moment, another figure in a white coat walked into the laboratory. The person who came was Danzo. He had no expression on his face, but there was a hint of heaviness between his brows. This was the first time in the past few years that he had seen Yul suffer such a severe injury. At this moment, Yul was still in a coma. Although the injuries on his body had been initially controlled, the more subtle aspects needed to be handled by Yul's own powerful recovery ability. Danzo. What happened to Yul? With a loud bang, everyone's attention was attracted. The door was slammed open, and Tsunade rushed into the root organization base in a hurry without even having time to change into her ninja uniform. Danzo did not hide the fact that Yul was injured. He even took the initiative to send root ninjas to find Tsunade. In terms of medical ninjutsu, Tsunade was the only undisputed authoritative expert. When Tsunade saw Yuli lying in the nutrition cabin, his face as pale as paper, in a deep coma, with his body covered with hideous scars, her face instantly became paler. Not long ago, Tsunade suddenly felt a throbbing in her heart, as if foreshadowing something ominous was about to happen. And coincidentally, at that moment, she suddenly won on the slot machine she was playing. Although he didn't win much, he scared Tsunade enough. Just when she was feeling uneasy, she soon received news from the root ninja that Yuli was seriously injured and asked her to go and see him quickly. This was too much. Tsunade didn't even take the money and followed the root ninja all the way to the root, where she saw the scene. At this moment, Yul is just a child. Why assign him such a dangerous mission? Tsunade lowered her voice subconsciously, but the anger in her tone could not be suppressed. It was just an accident, and besides, it's what ninjas have to deal with. Danzo's face was so gloomy that it seemed like water could drip out of it, but he knew very well that this was not the time to be angry, so he suppressed his dissatisfaction in his heart and restrained his temper. After all, he still hoped that Tsunade would seriously treat Yul's condition, so he must not annoy her again. Let's show it to Yul first, Danzo said in a deep voice, with a hint of helplessness and compromise in his voice. Tsunade took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger in her heart. She turned around and glared at Danzo fiercely, the anger in her eyes almost bursting out. But she also knew the importance of the matter, and did not dare to delay for a moment, so she walked straight towards Yule. Her steps hurried, and she looked a little exasperated coming in front of Yule. Tsunade bit her index finger tightly. Hai Su Yu Shen Wei, psychic magic. Slug, come out. As a thick cloud of smoke slowly rose, a small and exquisite slug appeared in Tsunade's palm. This slug was only the size of a palm, soft and smooth, and looked very cute, making people love it. Lady Tsunade, is there anything wrong? The slug blinked its big, bright eyes and asked in a childish voice, Slug, please go in and help me check Yuli's injuries and treat him. Okay, Tsunade-sama. The slug responded with a soft whisper, then slowly crawled into the hole of the nutrient capsule and swam over Yuli's body, leaving a faint flash of light wherever it went. As the slug continued to move, Yuli's originally dry and rough skin gradually became smooth. 2 full hours passed before the slug crawled out of the nutrition capsule, with obvious fatigue on its little face. Tsunade-sama, Yule-sama's body is rapidly absorbing nutrients and repairing his injuries. As long as the energy supply is sufficient, he's expected to wake up tomorrow. However, since his body has overconsumed its own muscle tissue, it will take some time to recover. Huh? Okay, Slug, you've worked hard. Go back and rest first. Yes. Okay, Lady Tsunade. The little slug nodded slightly, then nodded slightly to Danzo next to him, and then quietly disappeared from the spot. At this moment, Danzo and Tsunade's faces were obviously much more relaxed. After all, it was a blessing to know that Yuli would wake up tomorrow. King, from now on, you will focus on researching high-intensity energy supplements suitable for Yule. I don't want to see this happen again. The voice was gloomy, with unquestionable arrogance, and his eyes were staring at the medical ninja leading the team with a somewhat sinister look. Yes, my lord. The next morning, sunlight poured into the room through the window, illuminating everything just as the slug said. Yuli finally woke up slowly from her coma. As soon as he opened his eyes, he immediately felt an indescribable pain spreading throughout his body. Every corner seemed to be emitting miserable wails, and those cells that were originally quietly sleeping were now clamoring wildly and craving for energy as if they were extremely hungry. As Yuli woke up, his battered body suddenly underwent some miraculous changes. His self-awareness began to awaken and he gained subjective initiative. He was no longer able to passively accept the nourishment of the nutrient solution as before, but took the initiative to absorb all the available nutrients and energy around him. Not long after, the ninja on duty noticed something unusual and immediately shouted loudly. Then, within a few minutes, Danzo rushed to the laboratory. Looking at the extremely weak Yule in front of him, the old man's eyes flashed with a trace of heartache and joy, but his tone was still firm and powerful. Yule, what you need to do now is to have a good rest. Just rest well during this period of time, and we can think of other things after your injury has healed. Lee raised her head slightly and responded in a slightly hoarse voice, okay, Grandpa. In fact, even he himself couldn't count how many bones he had broken this time. Although his condition had improved after a period of recuperation, his body was still very fragile and vulnerable. However, not many outsiders knew about this matter. Apart from a few high-level figures such as Danzo, only a few close friends of Yule, such as Minato, knew about it. After hearing the news, they all expressed their desire to go to the route to visit their close friend who was sleeping in the cabin. The bonds are intertwined and entangled layer by layer, and finally converge into unbreakable metal and stone. The weather today was particularly gloomy and dark, as if a heavy rain might fall at any time, making people feel heavy and depressed. The streets of Konoha village seemed deserted compared to the past, with many pedestrians walking hurriedly, and the lively and bustling atmosphere of the past was gone. Minato was carrying a fruit basket, Kushina was holding a large box of barbecue, Hisui was holding a bouquet of sunflowers, and Shizune was holding a space scroll filled with medical books. Well, I have to say that everyone has a strong personality. Chapter 56 Visit, Beautiful Sunflowers. A unique partner and a unique friendship have formed an inexplicable bond. Yule, we're here to see you. The few of them could travel freely in the route. As good friends of the young master, they had been brought back here by Yuli many times, so many people in the route had an impression of their faces. Unless it is a confidential place, as long as Yuli is at the route, most areas will not be defended against them. After Minato and his companions arrived at the route, it didn't take long before someone led them to the room where Yuli was recuperating. Since Yuli woke up, he has moved from the laboratory to a ward located above the ground with excellent lighting. According to Yuli, if one can occasionally see the sun, would the body feel a little warmer? His body was completely immersed in a nutrition capsule. Although he could see what was happening outside, he could not speak. Yule, Do you feel better, Yule? So what mission did you accept this time? How did you end up like this? Come, Kushina, try this apple. I just peeled it, facing these people. Yuli felt dizzy. This. I was not careful in making friends. In front of him, Minato was concentrating on peeling an apple for Kushina, and holding the basket of fruit he brought. At this time, Kushina was enjoying the delicious barbecue with gusto, and occasionally brought it in front of her. You. Be a good person, Jiu Lama. What on earth are you chewing in your mouth? Spit out the octopus balls for me quickly. Woo. As expected, only Hisai and Shizune are truly kind to me. Turning my head, I caught a glimpse of Jiu carefully placing the sunflower in a place closer to the balcony with more sunlight. The golden petals were gleaming softly in the sun. The weather is nice today. There are pots of green plants placed on the balcony by Tuanzang. He said that they are used to purify the air in Yuli's room. It seems that the old man is also putting his knowledge into practice. God knows how interesting it was when Yuli heard Uncle Quing talk about how the old man personally went to the flower market to select these green plants. I didn't see it in person. I hope the flower shop owner was not scared by the old man. Then, Ji walked slowly to the fruit basket, picked up a bunch of big purple grapes, and started eating them by himself. Hey! Renjinu and you, Gilulu, this made Yuli so angry that she forgot for a moment that she was in the nutrition cabin. She opened her mouth subconsciously, and as a result, a large mouthful of nutrient solution was poured into her mouth through the throat and into her stomach. Cough. He was choked suddenly and had to close his mouth quickly, but his eyes were full of anger as he glared fiercely at the group of guys in front of him who were eating and drinking. Are you here to see me or to piss me off? Wow, I'm really impressed. In the office of the Hokage building, Sarutobi Hiruzen sat quietly at the table, staring at the crystal ball in front of him. At this moment, the crystal ball reflected the current situation of Yuli and other. Sarutobi Hiruzen's mouth corners slightly raised, outlining a faint smile. That smile was like the warm spring sun shining on his face, smoothing out some of the wrinkles on his face. His eyes were half closed, revealing a few deep crow's feet at the corners of his eyes, making his originally resolute face soften a little at this moment. In the center of this spotless white room, there is a huge nutrition cabin. Yuli in the cabin is staring at others angrily, but the people in the room ignore Yuli's eyes. They just put food in front of Yuli from time to time and then stuff it into their mouths. I have to say, Tisk, it smells so good, but it's a pity someone, only Jingain, was sitting quietly on the hospital bed beside her, her legs swinging slightly, her dress fluttering. The sunlight from the window shone into the room, sprinkling on half of her face. Her long black hair swayed in the breeze, reflecting colorful light in the sun. The sunflower that Jiu placed next to him was in full bloom, with a faint fragrance lingering around him. He tilted his head slightly, with a hint of clarity and softness in his eyes, and just like that, he looked at the four people in the room with a smile. Minato moved gently and skillfully. He carried a fruit plate and placed it on the table. He gently stroked Kushina, who was struggling with the barbecue with a silly look on her face, and wiped the chopped green onions off her face. Jiu smiled and held Kurama in his arms. He peeled the grapes one by one and fed them into his mouth. Kurama had a proud look on his face, but did not refuse Jiu's feeding at all. In the nutrition cabin, Yuli had an angry look on her face, but there was a deep smile in her eyes. That's great. It would be even better if Yul wasn't injured. Thinking of this, there was a trace of heartache in my eyes. A slight breeze rose up, hiding her expression as she lowered her head. On the third day, at night, there was a drizzle, and with a roar of thunder, the pale light of lightning flashed across the earth. Orochimaru had a solemn look on his face, his body wet, and walked into the roots with heavy steps. No one stopped us along the way. Master. Orochimaru, the young master's room is this way. Please follow me. Orochimaru's face no longer had the official smile that he usually wore. All he wanted now was to see Yuli as soon as possible. Sir, Orochimaru is here. Well, who took him to Yule? Yashida. Got it. Let's go down. Yes, Watanabe. Quing bowed slightly, turned around and walked towards the door. Wait. Bring Orochimaru a change of clothes, and bring him something to eat. Danzo, who was studying the file, raised his head, paused the pen in his hand, tapped the table, pondered for a moment, and stopped Watanabe, who was about to go out. Okay, my lord. Well, let's go down. Yes. Wow. The rain outside the window became heavier. Orochimaru stood in the room, looking at Yuli, who was sleeping soundly in the nutrition cabin, with an expression on his face that was not sure whether it was a smile or helplessness. Behind him, on the table, were the spare clothes and some food that Watanabe had just brought over. Tick-tock, tick-tock, the rain on my body continued to drip onto the ground, splashing water all over the ground, but today the splashes were not beautiful. Instead, they made the white room dirty. On the balcony, a few green plants swayed in the rain, and the sunflowers drooped their heads slightly. The injuries on Yule's body were no longer visible, but Orochimaru's mind was filled with the information he had obtained from Danzo. Ribs were broken, arm bones were shattered, and 60% of body fat and muscle disappeared. Orochimaru couldn't believe it. What would happen to him if Yuli failed in this mission? No, what would happen if he died in this mission? Rope tree, moon music. He shook his head and put these things out of his mind. He didn't want to think about them, or rather, Orochimaru didn't dare to think about these things at this moment. Orochimaru lowered his head, looking at his pale hands in a daze. He admitted that he seemed to be afraid at this moment. Yule, please don't die. Boom! There was a flash of lightning, and a white light illuminated everything in the room. A hint of panic flashed across Orochimaru's golden vertical pupils. He hadn't felt this way for a long time. We still need to improve our strength together and explore this world. Don't you want to live well, young sir? Yuli's ability to perceive the outside world was reduced to the minimum, and he was completely unaware that Orochimaru was right next to him at this moment. The joints were distinct, the skin was pale and bloodless, and the cold fingers touched the cold glass cover. However, Orochimaru had a smile on his face at this moment, as if he was touching Yuli's cheek. You need to improve your own strength, Yuli. After standing there for a long time, a puddle of water was left on the ground. Turning around, Orochimaru did not change into the clothes that Watanabe brought him, and even refused the umbrella handed to him by the root ninja, and just walked straight into the heavy rain. He had to go to the Iwagakure village for something, and now he had to ask the old man for a leave note and report the results of the mission. Yes, Orochimaru just returned from a mission outside, and his original return time was the day after tomorrow. He wiped the rain off his face, with fatigue in his eyes. He turned back and looked in the direction of Yuli, then walked into the rain. My lord, Orochimaru is gone. Well, Queen, send 2 teams of ninja to find Orochimaru tomorrow and let them follow Orochimaru's orders for the next period of time. Grown ups, it's okay, haha, let him go and make some noise. Did Yule mention the strategy of weakening the people? It just so happens that it has been lukewarm all the time, so it's not bad to let Orochimaru go. But will Orochimaru go? Yes, when he received the information, he understood what I meant. Yes, sir, I will mobilize them right away. Yule is still a little slow. Time flies, and a few days pass by in a blink of an eye. The days in the nutrition cabin are really boring. Yuli always feels physically and mentally exhausted and falls into deep sleep at night, with the stars shining brightly. Yuli finally welcomed the moment to leave the nutrition cabin. According to Nan, it would be best to observe Yuli's current health for a few more days to make sure that she has fully recovered before discussing discharge, but this stubborn little guy couldn't wait to step out of the nutrition capsule. For Yuli, who is already tired of being trapped in the nutrition capsule, waiting for even a moment longer was an unbearable torture. Unfortunately, they couldn't understand that after 8 days in the nutrition cabin, those bastards of Namikaze Minato brought 8 days worth of delicious food to the root. Is this something a human would do? Every time she came to the root to eat, she would deliberately bring the food in front of him and wave it for a few seconds. How could Yuli tolerate this? Yuli stood naked next to the nutrition cabin, wearing only a pair of wet shorts. Her shoulder-length hair fell like a waterfall on her smooth skin, causing Yuli to feel uncomfortable. When Yuli struggled to climb out of the nutrition cabin, the first thought in his mind was, delicious. Here I come. The names of various delicacies floated before Yuli's eyes like a barrage of comments: sushi, tempura, fried noodles, fried pork chops, ramen, teriyaki, fried chicken. Just thinking about these delicious dishes made him salivate and his stomach growled. He rushed back to the dormitory impatiently, put on his clothes quickly, and then went to say hello to Danzo without stopping. Then, Yule rushed out of the root base like an arrow. At this moment, he had only one thought in his mind: I can eat even a steamed instant noodle bun. Damn it, Minato, Kushina, and Hisai, don't let me catch you. When I catch you, I will definitely give you a good beating. While secretly swearing in his heart, he walked quickly on the streets of Konoha village, but the moon was already high in the sky and most of the shops in Konoha were closed. However, he had not given up and was still looking around, hoping to find a shop that was still open. Golem. Chapter 57 Night, Food, and Bonds. Her stomach rumbled, and after walking for a while, Yuli felt a little tired walking slowly on the empty streets. A bright moon hangs high in the sky above my head, stars are twinkling in the cloudless night sky, and the brilliant Milky Way is like a gorgeous band of light across the sky, shining brightly, and the silver light covers the earth like a veil. At this moment, everything was silent, and even the faint chirping of insects could be clearly heard as Yuli walked. He looked towards the Konoha village that had already fallen asleep, and sighed softly. Ugh, you. Lee actually understood that at this point in time, how could there still be shops open for business? Actually there are some, but those are shops that only open late at night, and you only can't get in. He is underage? Full of resentment. Uncle, I really just want to go in and eat something. The night was already deep, and Yuli was wandering in the streets of Konoha village like a ghost. At this moment, he jumped lightly, and after a few ups and downs, he landed steadily on the roof of a house. I didn't care whether the roof was clean or not and just lay down on it. It was the first wonderful night after my recovery. The breeze blew slowly, gently ruffling the strands of hair on his forehead, letting them flutter freely. At this moment, feeling this precious quiet time, Yuli's original idea of looking for delicious food disappeared in an instant. A few sparse lights are dotted throughout the Konoha village, and the surrounding is filled with a peaceful, harmonious, warm and friendly atmosphere. The bright moon hanging high in the night skies like a silver plate, casting down light as soft and bright as water. The night breeze caresses all things in the world as gently as grandma's hand, bringing people the freshness and moisture unique to the night. Mom. Konoha is pretty good, I kind of like it here. During this moment of distraction, Yuli seemed to blend into this quiet night. Perhaps, this is the place that Grandpa and the teacher want to protect. Suddenly, Yuli sat up and looked towards a place not far away with some confusion. There was a familiar breath approaching there. Hey. I've been looking for you for a while, and finally you're here. The person had not arrived yet, but the voice had already reached Yuli's ears. Minato? Why are you here? You're not sleeping at night and you're running around. You're not. I even went there specially, but the uncle said you ran away. Hey, it took me a long time to find you, looking for me, before Yuli could finish his words. Minato mysteriously took out a package from behind him. He carefully opened the package, and inside was an exquisite lunchbox with a small simple portrait of Minato on it. It was obviously a gift from Kushina to Minato. I really wanted to complain, but the moment Minato opened the lid of the lunchbox, an enticing aroma hit my nose. Yuli swallowed his saliva and took a closer look. The lunchbox was filled with all kinds of delicacies: golden and crispy tempura, tender and juicy barbecue, crispy and delicious fried chicken. Every piece of food was neatly arranged, almost filling up all the space in the lunchbox. Eat quickly. I specifically asked Uncle Nan, and he said that your body has fully recovered today. But according to the original plan, you still have to rest for 2 more days. At this point, Minato chuckled. With your personality, you definitely can't stay still, so I thought of bringing you some delicious food. Who knew you would be so quick? While muttering to himself, he handed the food and cutlery to Yuli, and kept urging him to enjoy it while it was hot. Yuli looked at the lunchbox in her hand silently, feeling a little dazed at this moment. Several familiar voices suddenly came. Hey, you guys are here. Why? Are you here too? You are the only one allowed to come. That's right, we heard everything Uncle Nan said today. Suddenly, it became lively. Kushina, Hyuga Hisaho and Shizune came towards the sound, each of them holding a carefully wrapped bag in their hands. Looking at the food in front of her, Yuli didn't know what to say. It was already 1 o'clock, and the last lights in the surrounding houses were extinguished in the dark night. The food, still steaming, was placed in front of him. Suddenly, Yuli felt a little wet in the corners of her eyes, as if she was not so hungry anymore, as if something heavy was buried in his heart. He smiled, immediately lowered his head, and ate the food in front of him in big mouthfuls. Hey, Yule, you're not crying because you're so moved. No. I haven't eaten normal food in too long. Ha 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 ha. Yule, don't worry. You haven't eaten for such a long time. You need to let your stomach and intestines adapt. You can't eat so fast. We are still quiet and gentle. What? The night in Konoha village was exceptionally quiet. The moonlight sprinkled on the ground like water, as if covering the entire village with a layer of silver yarn. In a corner of the village, on the roof of a house that had long been darkened, 5 children grew out at this moment. No one cared whether there was dust on the roof. They stretched their bodies lazily and quietly enjoyed this rare quiet moment. No one spoke, only the breeze gently brushed across their cheeks, bringing a slight cool feeling. However, such moments are always short-lived. Everyone knows that tomorrow, they will have to return to their busy lives and practice. Minato, Kushina and Hisui will continue to train with teacher Jiraiya while also carrying out various dangerous missions. Shizune will learn medical ninjutsu from Tsunade, and her goal is to become an excellent medical ninja. As for Yuli, he will return to the darkness and carry out those unknown tasks. Yuli knew very well that someone had to do these things. Although he felt disgusted with the blood and violence deep down, he never resisted. Someone had to do it. Since he could do it, he should not let Minato and the others know. He relaxed his body, changed his posture and lay on the roof, slightly tilting his head to look at his friends who were enjoying a moment of peace around him. In fact, Schumann and his companions also vaguely knew what Yuli's usual tasks were like, but everyone had their own choices. They also knew that for Yuli, the only thing they needed to do was to give him an arm to lean on when he wanted to rest. Friends are like life-saving straws, supporting Yuli from being swallowed by darkness. When he closed his eyes, a scarlet swamp appeared in his mind. Under the swamp, there were countless wronged souls and evil spirits trying to pull Yuli into the endless abyss. It was the warm light radiating from the friends around him that turned into tough chains and fetters, tightly holding Yuli, like anchors, allowing him to always stay awake and prevent him from sinking completely. Friend. A faint red light flashed in his eyes. Yuli's body had shown some irreversible effects after a long period of high differentiation, but no one knew about it yet. Not even the research department had discovered it. The results show that everything is normal. Chapter 58 Exploration Mission. Happy times are always short, just like when Minato tried to grab food from Kushina and Yule, but before he even picked up his chopsticks, the food was gone without him noticing. All 5 of them had to return to their own lives to study, practice, and carry out their missions. A week passed quickly, and Yuli's vacation life came to an end. After fully recovering from his injuries, he received a mission personally issued by the old man. In fact, this mission is closely related to the mission he had previously performed in the land of Earth. In other words, the last mission was a trigger for this mission. Thinking back to the last mission, Yuli felt a little sad. He might never forget the experience in his whole life. After successfully arriving at the mission location and exchanging information with the contact person, Team Yuli headed back towards Konoha, but on the way back they met Wang Tu, who was well prepared. Yes, the son of the Tsuchikage of the Iwagakure village, the elite Jonin. Wang Tu. Faced with such a powerful opponent like Wang Tu, Yuli's teammates took the initiative to stay behind to buy time for him to escape in order to complete the mission, and died on the spot. The mission that time was a temporary team effort, and the 4 members of Yule team were not even familiar with each other, and they only knew each other's code names: Sans Dog, Old Wolf, Nightingale. Yuli doesn't even know their names, but even with the 3 of them risking their lives to stop it, they still couldn't completely open the way for Yuli to survive. That was the first time that she had completely opened up her body's limitations. And Yuli never wanted to experience that kind of pain again in her life. He actively mobilized the cells in his body to frantically devour the flesh and blood around him and converted it into chakra. After fighting desperately, he barely broke out of the siege and was able to return to Konoha on the day Yuli woke up. He also learned that the contact person for this mission had also lost contact. A few days later, after a secret investigation by the Root, Yuli got the news that the contact person also died on that day. It's not just this time. It was also the same during the last mission in Bird Country. The execution time of the mission was leaked, and his team fell into the trap carefully set by the Rock Ninja. If it weren't for the fact that they were quite strong, or if it wasn't for the fact that the land of Earth had seriously underestimated the true strength of these people, it is very likely that during that mission, Orochimaru's team would face the dilemma and risk of casualties. It was also from that time that these stinky rats in Konoha village officially entered Danzo's sight. However, he had been holding back and wanted to do something big, so the Root searched for a whole year. And the entire Konoha underwent a large-scale, rigorous search from top to bottom, just to find more stinky rats and dead cockroaches. I only pray that the last rainstorm will bring a killing blow, and that the cockroaches in the sewers will not lurk deeper. But during this mission, when Yuli was seriously injured and almost couldn't come back, looking at his bloody appearance with his internal organs exposed, seeing Yuli's pupils turn bloodshot because of the killing, and the look of relief in his eyes when he handed over the mission scroll, at that moment, Danzo felt as if his heart stopped for a moment. At that moment, he admitted that he seemed a little panicked, so, Danzo finally couldn't suppress his inner anger. He gave up on going any deeper and decided to give the other villages a shock. This time Danzo has already discussed with Sarutobi Hiruzen, and the Anbu and the Root will work together. A comprehensive purge is about to begin. They no longer want to endure the hateful rat that caused the information of this mission to be leaked has also been successfully locked down. Waiting for Danzo's order, a large-scale cleansing storm is about to officially begin. After a sigh, Yuli refocused his attention on the mission information in front of him. This time, he would serve as a member of the vanguard of the Root and officially kick off the Great Purge. Many spies adopted a one-way communication method and quietly integrated into the ordinary residents of Konoha village. Just like a drop of water merging into the sea without leaving any trace, they cleverly concealed all traces of their true identities and silently watched every move of Konoha village from a completely different perspective. Maybe it's the amiable lady who sells pancakes on the streets every day, or the old man who works hard to collect garbage. Except for their superiors, no one knows where they are with their superb camouflage skills. It is almost impossible to pick them out from the crowd. This is why it took the Root a full year to find any clues. It has never been an easy task. No one knows what means these spies use to transmit information, and there is no way of knowing how much confidential information about Konoha village they have leaked. This situation has long been known among all the villages, and no one would take the initiative to bring it to the table for discussion. If you release people into my village, I will release people into your village. If a spy is exposed and caught by his master, it only means that his side is incompetent and he can only consider himself unlucky and then send a new spy to continue the mission. Stop? It's impossible to stop. I can't stop in this life. This has become a special game that only 5 powerful ninja villages can participate in. Only they have enough strength and foundation to play this game to the end. In the final analysis, if your fist is not big enough and hard enough, how can you participate forcefully? My dear, do you think your feng shui location is good? A few years ago, one night, Yuli first put forward the concepts of cultural invasion and feminine trend, which directly open up the thinking of Danzo and Sarutobi Hiruzen. How could such scheming and shrewd guys like them remain indifferent to something that is obviously beneficial to the village? Cultural invasion is the most deadly. The two began to discuss and research it frantically. After several days of discussion, they finally came up with something that seemed to be true but was absolutely effective. Then, a secret audition competition appeared, where the number of spectators was less than that of contestants, 9 men and 1 woman. A total of 5 teams were finally formed. 8 of the men have a different temperament from ordinary people. They look extremely weak, delicate and tender, and their whole bodies exude the feminine aura that originally belongs to women. The aura on her body is simply the brightest star in the night sky. She immediately caught the eye of Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo. Immediately, the 8 were divided into 4 groups to develop bonds and emotions with each other, and began a 2.5-year special training journey. The last 2 people are different from the 8 groups. They are composed of the only female among the 10 people and another male. The boy is handsome and sunny, exuding masculinity. The girl is also slender and agile, a perfect combination of feminine and masculine beauty. The 2 of them were excellent in every aspect, so they formed their own team, did not mix with others, and received separate training. On the day when the special training ended, the sun was shining and the breeze was blowing, but Yuli felt a chill and couldn't help but get goosebumps that day. Danzo brought Yule to the site to inspect the results. As the idea behind this action, Danzo said Yule should come and take a look. However, this one look made Yule regret it. It was really eye-catching. He swore that he would never let these people appear in the Fire Nation again. The 4 groups of boys stood in a row shyly, with delicate and heavy makeup on their faces. Their skin was extremely white, as if they had not seen the sun for a long time. He has a thin body with almost no obvious muscle lines, giving people a feeling of being weak and frail. No, it's not just that feeling. These boys are really extremely fragile. Dancing a meaningless dance or just a careless fall can make them tearful, and even drop crystal clear little pearls, crying loudly, and people around them have to comfort and hug them. The weather seems a bit cold today. Goosebumps all over the floor. This kind of beauty must be experienced by other countries as soon as possible to open their eyes. The world is so big and full of surprises. You should immerse yourself in this new and wonderful change. Yuli couldn't imagine where the Root found such a special person from. They didn't become like this through acquired transformation, but were born like this. Or was it that their temperament was just not so obvious at the beginning? But after this training, they were epically strengthened. Facing such a group of unique people, Yuli holds blessings and respect in his heart, and sincerely hopes that they can achieve greater development in other countries, and gain more and more fans, preferably the kind of fans who blindly follow them. which will definitely help their careers. Go, go. I really can't bear to look at it anymore. I shuddered and couldn't help but glance at the few people posing on the stage. The men, I hope they'll like it. From that day on, Yuli never saw these people again. He heard from the old man that these 5 teams were arranged to the Kingdom of Flowers, and they were prepared to spread slowly from the Kingdom of Flowers to other places and eventually reach the other 4 major countries. The team that best meets Yuli's aesthetic standards will travel around the world and finally enter the Fire Nation to ensure that the Fire Nation will not be culturally polluted by other countries in the same way. However, what Danzo and Saratobi Hiruzen did not expect was that this little idol guy actually played an unexpected role. There are people in Iwagakure who actually like this group, and they even revealed some secrets to the 2 of them during an in-depth discussion of art late at night. In the early hours of the morning, Yuli held a list of names given to him by Danzo. The above listed people are several villagers from Konoha village whose suspicions have not yet been fully confirmed. They have been included as suspects because they have all had contact with a spy from the Land of Water in recent times. These spies from various villages quietly lurk in Konoha village. They have no contact with each other and do not know each other. Even if they are close to each other, it is difficult to identify each other's true identity. What's more difficult is that each spy has his own exclusive single contact person. It has to be said that spies are indeed troublesome characters. Of course, Yuli's responsibility this time is only to confirm the authenticity of the identity of the mission target. As for the subsequent steps, he is not required to complete them. Once Yuli confirms the identity of the spy, death may become an unattainable luxury for the spy. There are 5 people on the list, 3 men and 2 women, a young man, a young woman, a middle-aged man and 2 elderly people. The young man was a porter named Masato Shinda, and he lived in Mugwali in the west village of Konoha, where there were many young people like him who made a living by selling their physical labor. They basically all came from various places in the Land of Fire, and they stepped into Konoha village, a place full of opportunities and challenges, with dreams and aspirations, attempting to show their talents and create a new world for themselves. But reality dealt him a heavy blow. He has no skills, no money, no connections, and relies entirely on his passion and young and strong body. In the end, he can only sell his strength in places like Mugwalane where strong men gather. Chapter 59, Grandmama Yoko. The other young person is a woman named Miki Hoshigami, a dancer in the Kabukicho dance hall. She was born into a family of professional artists, which can be said to be passed down from generation to generation, or, is it more appropriate to call her a musical family? I don't know why I always feel a weird feeling coming over me. However, Miki Hoshigami had a tragic fate. Her family was originally well off, but when she was still a minor, her parents were attacked by bandits on their way to performance and both died. Since then, she has been the only one left alone in the family. The only middle-aged man was named Jun Yoshido. His wife died early and they had no children. Because he missed his wife so much, he did not choose to find another wife. Now he runs a small grocery store by himself. In his free time, he likes to play and fight with the children in the neighborhood. His life is quite leisurely. As for the 2 old men, one of them was a senior villager living in the northwest corner of Konoha. They settled here shortly after the village was built and are now among the oldest villagers in Konoha. The old woman never married. She said that when she was young, she was a stunningly beautiful woman. She was also a geisha. However, because she saved a lot of money when she was young, she now lives a comfortable life. At the same time, this old woman is the only person who has had any interactions with Yuli. The last old man moved to Konoha village with his family and settled down there. His son was talented and happened to be in good times. Konoha Ninja School was founded and he grew up to be a brave and fearless ninja, but died heroically during a mission. Under the tragic news, his wife, who was already weak and ill for many years, could not bear the pain of losing her son and passed away just a few months later, leaving him alone in the world. If the route had followed their opinion, these people with obvious suspicion would have been arrested directly, and they would rather kill the wrong people than let them go. However, perhaps out of a test for Yuli, these people were handed over to Yuli for handling. As long as Yuli said a word, the root ninjas would appear in an instant and take them away. On that day, Yuli created 4 shadow clones and went to the homes of the 5 suspects at the same time. One shadow clone quietly came to the home of the female dancer, hiding in the dark and silently watching her every word and action. After 2 days of observation, it was determined that the dancer had no chakra fluctuations and no signs of excessive exercise. She would go to the dance hall to work during the day and return home at night to play the guzheng music alone with great concentration. After observing for several days, Yuli still found nothing. At the same time, the second clone also came to the middle-aged man's residence and observed for several days, but also did not gain anything. Another old man, no suspect. There was finally something to be gained from the third clone, and it was that young man, Masato Nobuta, who revealed some clues under the observation of the third clone one morning. While transporting goods, Masato Shinda secretly smuggled some contraband. Intending to deliver the basic information about Konoha that he had observed during this period through further investigation, Yuli also discovered that this person was the spy sent by the Hidden Mist village. However, what was interesting was that the two spies did not know each other. It can only be said that Nobuta Masato was unlucky to meet such a teammate, otherwise, he might not have been exposed. Although it was not a big fish, it was still a harvest after all, and Yuli immediately handed it over to the root members who came later to deal with it. After all, they were more professional than himself in dealing with such matters. As for the only old lady that Yuli knew, Yuli's real body went to investigate in person. Yuli couldn't help but think back to the first time when they took on a D-level mission within Konoha. Of course, that was also the only time in Yuli's career so far. At that time, it was Kushina who wanted to experience what it felt like to be on a small mission. It happened that Orochimaru had reached a critical step in his experiment and was busy with the experiment and had no time to care about them. As a result, Yuli and the other two randomly chose a task of finding a cat from the task hall, and the person who issued this task was the old lady. Akima Miyoko. Grandma Midori lives in an alley northwest of Konoha and has a cute little cat, Huahua. At home it is said that when Grandma Miyoko was young, she was a skilled dancer, just like Miki Hoshigami. However, compared to Miki Hoshigami, Grandma Miyoko was extremely popular at that time. Her melodious singing voice and stunning appearance made countless people fascinated and fell in love with her whenever she steps onto the stage. The charm she exudes from her every move is enough to touch the hearts of every audience member. These were what Grandma Midori said when she was chatting with Yuli and the others. Although there were no so-called photographs at that time, my mother-in-law's home still has a portrait of her drawn by a painter. Unfortunately, time flies, and after going through vicissitudes, this portrait has become a little old, and the color has gradually turned yellow, just like the once beautiful face of my mother-in-law. At this point, Grandmother Midori's face would show a sigh of the passing of time, and she would gently stroke Kushina's head, smiling, looking at these energetic young people in front of her, with a surge of emotion and relief in her heart. After all, she came here to settle down shortly after Konoha village was built. As one of the first residents of Konoha, she can be regarded as a living fossil who witnessed the growth process of Konoha. Holding a brand new photo in hand, you can tell at a glance that it was taken by a candid photographer. The protagonist in the photo has a bright and gentle smile, which warms people's hearts like the warm spring sun. The faint wrinkles at the corners of the eyes and forehead seem to be slightly relaxed by this smile, revealing a trace of tranquility and peace after years of precipitation. The age spots on the cheeks add a sense of vicissitudes. Grandma Akima Miyoko is really a very gentle person. However, reality is always so cruel and ruthless. Who would have thought that such a kind and amiable mother-in-law would be suspected of being a spy? Yuli stared closely at Grandma Midori in the photo. Her eyes, which were originally gentle and smiling, gradually cooled down, and were replaced by endless confusion and indifference. He knew that if this respectable elder was really a hostile person, he would definitely tear her disguise apart without mercy. But, mother-in-law, I really hope you are not. After careful consideration, Yuli decided not to sit and wait for death, and he finally chose to go there in person. So, on an evening when the sun was setting and the afterglow was all over the sky, Yuli, wearing a simple, comfortable and loose set of clothes, quietly came to the door of Midori's grandmother's house. The place where Midoriko's grandmother lives is in the old town area of Konoha village, which was also one of the first buildings when the village was built. However, with the continuous development of Konoha, the economic center has been constantly moving. Now, there are not many people around, and the prosperous and bustling scene of the past is no longer there. Those who are wealthy or pursue a fashionable lifestyle have moved elsewhere, and now only a few nostalgic elderly people are left here. They have an inseparable feeling for this land and are reluctant to leave this home that carries decades of memories. At the entrance of the alley, looking over the wooden gate, I saw a warm orange-red sunlight in the distance, which was like a layer of gauze falling on the wooden house, dyeing it into a brilliant color. Standing still and changing the perspective slightly, outside the wooden house with a slightly old feel, There is a tall and strange Huangjianoya tree. It was struck by lightning in its early years, but it survived with half of its crown still lush and green, while the other half has long lost its vitality. Grandma Miyoko was lying on a rattan chair leisurely, looking peaceful. Next to her, there was a small side table, on which a cute long-haired calico cat was lying comfortably. Its four little paws were slightly stretched out, with the pink pads faintly visible. Its soft and smooth fur was like a piece of fine silk, and the whole thing looked like a round cloud, making people want to reach out and touch it. The scattered spots of light avoided the branches and leaves of the yellow horn tree and fell freely, dotted around Grandma Midori's body. The breeze blew gently through the treetops, the leaves swayed slightly, and the spots of light also jumped and danced lightly, like a group of cheerful elves. The mother-in-law closed her eyes slightly, with a faint smile on her lips, as if she was enjoying the tranquility and beauty of the evening. At this moment, the sun is warm and the wind is gentle. Yuli stood there quietly, his eyes a little vague, looking at the scene in front of him, his heart full of emotion. For a moment, he couldn't bear to disturb his mother-in-law's sweet dreams. Suddenly I felt a little regretful. Should I find another time to do it again? Just as Yuli stopped, the familiar and gentle voice of Grandma Midori suddenly came from the front, interrupting his thoughts. Hey, Yule, why are you here? Where are those two girls, Kushina and Hisahi? Looking up, he found that his grandmother had opened her eyes without him noticing. She looked at Yuli gently with eyes that were filled with the years. In a trance, Yuli seemed to see someone very kind, a residual image deep in his memory. That figure seemed to also like to look at him so gently and like to touch his head. Who is that? I suddenly had a slight tingling in my head. Is it Grandma? I think it should be Grandma. He knocked his head hard, came back to his senses, looked at Grandma Midori, and raised the corners of his mouth, returning to a bright smile on his face. Mother-in-law, I came to see you. The two of them are a little busy. Come again next time when you are free. Chapter 60 today and number 039, S meal seems a bit salty. With a creak sound, the wooden fence was gently pushed open. Yuli hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath, smiled, and walked into Grandma Midori's courtyard with light steps. Grandma Midori stood up a little slowly, but her movements were still graceful and elegant. A dead leaf suddenly fell from the branch of the half-dead and half-thriving yellow-horn tamarisk tree behind her, and it flew across the space between the two of them. He walked slowly to the eaves, moved a chair out from the side, looked up and smiled at Yuli. The tenderness in his eyes remained the same and never changed. Upon seeing this, Yuli quickly placed the small package in her hand on a small side table, next to Huahua, who was lying on the table enjoying the afternoon. Huahua raised her head lazily, saw the person coming, hummed softly, then lowered her head and squinted her eyes. He quickly walked to Midori's side, carefully picked up the stool, walked with her to the small side table, and put the chair down. Come to think of it, the two little girls came here with another little boy a few days ago. At that time, I asked them why you didn't come. Mother-in-law, I was a little busy recently. I'm here now. I brought you some cakes from the Kokubo family. They have your favorite cherry blossom flavor. Haha, you come if you want. Why bring all this? Although the mother-in-law did not pay attention to those things, she was just chatting with Yuli about family matters. Back then, Midori was also a very popular celebrity. She was well informed and had eaten all kinds of delicacies. She had also met all kinds of people and experienced all kinds of things. At that time, there were countless people pursuing her, lining up from Konoha to Daimyo Prefecture, but she looked down on them all and chose to live alone. In addition, she had some assets, so even if she grew older and came to Konoha to live alone, she could still live a comfortable and happy life. Nowadays, my mother-in-law has a calico cat named Huahua. On weekdays, she chats with the old men and women in the alleys around her, talks about family matters, and goes out for a walk from time to time. Her life is quite leisurely and carefree. Only when I see other people's younger generations coming to visit from time to time, I can't help but feel a little lonely. This is also the reason why Kushina and others occasionally come to visit Grandma Miyoko. The mother-in-law's movements were a little slow. She carefully took the calico cat down from the small side table and gently placed it in Yuli's arms. Then she told him to wait for a moment and turned around to make a pot of hot tea. Yuli hurriedly stood up, repeatedly saying that she would do it herself. Her movements were gentle but powerful. She quickly walked to the side of Midori's mother-in-law, and supported Midori steadily, allowing her to sit down on the rattan chair with peace of mind. Zio-san, who glanced at Yule, suddenly broke free from his arms, jumped lightly, and jumped accurately into Midori's arms. She stretched out her body, yawned, opened her mouth, rubbed her little head against Midori, and finally squinted her eyes, enjoying Midori's touch with satisfaction, including this time. This is Yuli's 4th time here. The first time was to complete a mission to return Sanhua to Midori. The next 2 times were when Kushina and Hisahi brought him to visit. However, Yuli didn't stay for long each time because he was very busy at that time, but even so, Yuli still remembered the structure of Midoriko's house. After a while, he slowly walked out holding a tray. At this time, the boy was wearing a light gray-green casual outfit, with a crimson headband tying his long hair behind him. He looked refreshing and neat, full of youthful spirit. A one-handed tray with a pot of tea and 2 teacups on it. Yuli walked steadily and calmly, with a faint smile on her face. When she noticed that Midori was looking back at her, she narrowed her eyes slightly, raised the corners of her mouth, revealing 2 crescent eyes, and tilted her head slightly. At this time, Miyoko had already opened the cake box and placed it on the small side table, looking at Yule with a smile. The cakes of the Kokubo family are not actually very famous. It's just that in my memory, when I first came to Konoha, the first thing I tried was their Sakura jade cake. I have been eating it for decades. It's just that I'm old now and can't walk, so I don't go to buy it very often. I don't know whether it's his son or grandson who's in charge now. Well, if we talk about taste, it's still his cooking that's the best. Lee smiled. I'll bring it to you next time. Haha, I am already so old, and I still trouble you. Midori smiled and gently picked up a piece of Sakura jade cake and put it into her mouth, chewing it carefully and savoring it. Although she was old, the elegance of her youth was still deeply imprinted in Midori's bones. Pick up the teacup and shake it gently. The tea in the cup ripples slightly, and the fragrance of the tea and the aroma of the pastries blend in the air. Slowly bring the teacup close to your lips and sip it in small sips. Your movements are elegant and slow, and every detail reveals a tranquil temperament. The last rays of light shone on her face. Between the interweaving of light and shadow, Yuli seemed to see the face of her mother-in-law when she was young. Grandma Miyoko was really a very gentle person. Standing up slightly, Yuli carefully took the cake handed over by Miyoko with both hands, put it into his mouth and tasted it carefully, and said softly, "How is this body, mother-in-law? Haha, we are all old now, and we just live like this every day. What's good or bad about it? Every day we just eat, sleep, and bask in the sun. There is nothing to look forward to. It's just that my legs and feet are a little unsteady now." There was a hint of helplessness in his words, but it was quickly replaced by relief. "But seeing you guys so lively is like seeing myself when I was young. It's great to be young, Grandma." Miyoko's laughter is filled with nostalgia for her youth. It's really good to be young. At this moment, the sun was slowly setting in the sky, casting its last rays of light. The sky was gradually filled with a large area of dark blue, dotted with a touch of purple, like a dream. It adds a bit of mysterious and romantic atmosphere to the whole picture. Under the half-dried and half-lush Huangjianhoya, an old man and a young man are laughing and talking happily. A calico cat is lying on the ground, humming softly, and the aroma of tea is rising. "You are in such good health, you will surely live a long life. Ha ha ha, you little guys are just being sweet. It's getting dark soon. Why don't you accompany me for dinner before leaving?" With a bright smile on her face, Miyoko enthusiastically invited Yule. Yule thought to himself that he had come here for investigation and would not refuse. So, his eyes flashed slightly, and with a slight smile, he agreed without hesitation this time. Midori refused Yuli's help, but stood up slowly, patted her back gently, stood up straight, and walked into the house. Yuli stood quietly by the side. The smile on her face disappeared. At this time, Arhua finally woke up and enjoyed Yuli's gentle caress comfortably, making comfortable purring sounds from time to time. Grandma Midori slowly lit the firewood, washed rice and vegetables, and every movement was delicate. Occasionally, when she turned around, she would see Yuli leaning against the doorpost, holding the cat in one hand and gently stroking it with the other, with a gentle smile in her eyes, and the smile on her face became a little deeper. After thinking for a while, he scooped another bowl of rice from the rice jar and put it into the pot. "Young man, you should eat more." Yuli looked up and quietly stared at the figure of Miyoko's grandmother, making a fire and cooking. The grandmother was really serious and focused in her work. She once said that we should take work seriously and also take life seriously. Life is our own, and so is the future. At this moment, Yuli deeply agreed with this. Everything is a big thing in life, And we need to treat everything with care, keeping our inner calm and tranquility. Everything is a practice, everything is a way to cultivate our mind. Life is about constantly honing ourselves and cultivating our mind. As he breathed, Yuli's eyes slowly calmed down, becoming peaceful and firm. His gaze stayed on Grandma Midori, who had her back to him. He sighed silently, and an inexplicable emotion welled up in his heart. He lowered his head and happened to meet Ahua's eyes when she raised her head. In Ahua's emerald green pupils like gemstones, he seemed to see an expressionless version of himself at this moment. He seemed to have become extremely unfamiliar, so unfamiliar that he felt a little confused and bewildered. As night falls quietly, wisps of light smoke begin to rise from the ancient narrow alleys. They are like soft gauze, slowly floating in the air, adding a sense of tranquility and peace to the entire alley. Until night falls, the smoke gradually dissipates in the room. Several warm and soft yellow lights were shining on the solid wood dining table, on which were placed several carefully prepared dishes. The portion of each dish was just enough to fill the depression in the center of the plate, not too much, not too little. Everything was just right. Midoriko ate very slowly. While chewing the food in her mouth, she watched Yuli eat the food she cooked with big mouthfuls, with a smile in her eyes. She was also very happy that Yuli liked the food. This was Yuli's second time to eat at Midori's house. She knew that as a young person, Yuli must have a big appetite, so she specially prepared more food. Yule, I've never told you that when I was young, I once accepted the love of a man. I also dreamed of staying with him forever and spending the rest of my life with him. Grandma, you. Lee stopped what he was doing, raised his head, and listened attentively as Grandma Midori told him her past stories. At that time, I felt as if I was the happiest person in the world. I even thought of a name for our future child. With memories in his eyes and a faint smile on his face, but in the blink of an eye, Midoriko's mother-in-law's tone changed, but he chided me, took the money I saved over the years, and disappeared, as if he had evaporated from the world. He probably didn't even know that I was pregnant with his child at that time. What a damned man. Mother-in-law, if I ever meet him, I will break his limbs and make him kneel before you and kowtow to you to apologize. You. Lee's eyes turned fierce and he said viciously. Midori shook her head, her eyes filled with bitter memories and deep sadness. It's all over. My poor child didn't even have the chance to see the world before the boss aborted him with a bowl of abortion water. But, haha, the boss still has some humanity. A few years later, he let me go and gave me a sum of money before I left, enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my life. But what's the use of this money, eh? Crystal teardrops slid down Grandma Midori's cheek, gently dripped into the bowl in front of her, and seeped into the white and warm rice. Sometimes I wonder, if my child could be born safely and grow up smoothly, would I have become a grandmother by now? Maybe my grandchildren would be about the same age as you and Kushina. Miawa. Who gently rubbed the hem of Miyoko's trousers. Who, mother-in-law, I'm sorry. After a long silence, Yuli paused. Perhaps he should say something comforting at this time, but somehow, these words slipped to his lips, but he couldn't say them. After all, he came with a mission, so he silently put down the bowl and chopsticks, lowered his head, his heart full of guilt and uneasiness, and for a moment he did not dare to look at Midori. Haha, I'm just talking. It's all in the past. Let's eat. Ha. I'm very happy that you can come. His movements were still graceful, and he chewed the salty rice slowly and leisurely. Today, it seems a little too salty. Chapter 61 People in Memory, Pain. Midoriko was born in a poor family. Her ancestors relied on fishing for a living and relied entirely on the weather to make a living. Although the family's life was poor, it was also quite fun. However, fate was cruel. When she was young, she encountered famine and the whole family was threatened by hunger. Faced with such a difficult situation, the family could not feed both her and her sister at the same time. In desperation, in order to support the family, the parents had to make a difficult decision, drawing lots to decide who could continue to stay at home. Although she was filled with pain and reluctance, Midori was well aware of her family's plight. As an older sister, she did not want to see her younger sister suffer more, so she resolutely chose to leave. From then on, the family was separated by thousands of miles, and the pain of separation became an indelible memory in her life. Fortunately, a teacher saw her talent and taught her skills. With her good foundation and unremitting efforts, her life gradually got better. After that, she sent some money home from time to time, but they never met again. The big boss would not allow his courtesan to have such a shameful background that she could not bear to look back on. Yuli stood up and carefully handed Arhu to Midori, then took the initiative to take on the task of washing the dishes. She silently took the dishes to the kitchen, washed them, and put them in order. After everything was cleaned up, Yuli returned to the living room again and chatted with Midori for a while. With today's communication, he felt more and more friendly to this gentle old woman, who was like an old lady to him. She would watch him eat with a smile and pick up some food for him from time to time, telling him not to be picky about food. Looking up at the night sky, the moon is exceptionally bright tonight, and there are not two clouds in the vast sky. But, Grandma, why, no matter how slow your movements are, no matter how similar you are, why is your vitality so strong? Slowly lowering his eyes, a hint of sadness flashed across Yuli's eyes. He turned his gaze to Midori, who was caressing Ahu, grinned, smiled slightly, and said goodbye to her. I will come again. Mother-in-law. Actually, I don't really want to come. Midoriko smiled kindly, and in Yuli's mind, a vague figure gradually pieced together, but it was always unclear in the ninja world. Being able to live to be in 160s is considered extremely long-lived, but at this age, and considering how much suffering Midori had endured in her youth as described, her body should not still have such strong vitality. Yuli didn't pay too much attention to it before, but after a close observation today, he still found some clues in the route. In the leader's office, Yuli was sitting on a chair, and Danzo was looking at him across the table. Contrary to usual practice, there were no piles of files and documents on the desks today. Instead, there were delicious dishes and 2 bottles of sake. Danzo had no intention of stopping Yuli from drinking. As a ninja, improving one's drinking capacity was one of the essential parts of training. Only with a good drinking capacity could one deal with various situations more calmly when performing tasks. Yule, how's the investigation going? Grandpa, I want to observe for a few more days. Well, let it go. You did a good job this time. The route has already gotten what it wanted from Shindo Masato. If you need anything later, talk to Yamanaka Fuu. He will fully cooperate with you. Okay, Grandpa. Moon. Music. What's wrong, Grandpa? What's on your mind, you? Lee felt a little strange today. You know, for a person with such strong vitality as him, the energy he consumes to maintain body functions is not a small amount. But today, Lee, contrary to his usual behavior, hardly touched his chopsticks. This was really different from his usual self. Lee paused for a moment, and the chopsticks in his hand also hovered in the air. He frowned, as if thinking about something. Grandpa, I don't know why, but Midori always gives me a very kind feeling. I seem to see my grandma in her. I can't bring myself to do it. Grandpa, if she is really a spy, can I really do it? My memory seems to be a little confused. Grandma. Why don't I have many memories of Grandma? Grandpa, my head hurts. Having said this, Yuli raised his head, tears welling up in the corners of his eyes. He felt extremely tormented in his heart. Midoriko was like a sharp wedge that had pried a small hole in the memory of his brain. This time, his memory seemed to become confused and blurred, and countless unclear memory fragments took the opportunity to flee. However, no matter how hard Yuli tried, he couldn't piece together the complete picture. This inexplicable feeling made him miserable, as if he was trapped in an endless dark abyss with no way out. Danzo. Did it say anything? He was silent for a moment, then slowly stood up with a somewhat dull step, and walked to Yule. He carefully stretched out his arms and gently held him in his arms, afraid of hurting him. Looking at the child whose body was twitching slightly, Danzo's face revealed an indescribable look of heartache. He had raised Yuli for several years, and had treated him like his own son, like his own grandson. Seeing Yuli in pain, Danzo felt bad. However, he had no way to solve Yuli's situation. As the leader of the route, the war had just ended. Faced with a child from another country brought back from the battlefield, how could he not examine him? But it was useless. After an in-depth investigation, Yuli's identity seemed to be a native of the secluded village in the Rain country. However, there was a problem. His language and his status were incompatible with the status of a secluded village. All of this puzzled him. There was no way he would allow such an unstable factor to enter the village casually, so he fought for the custody of Yuli from Hirozen. But later on, some things happened that slowly changed Danzo's mentality, and Yuli's memories seemed to be constantly lost. No, not lost, but becoming blurred. He could remember a lot of things, but often when it came to specific things, Yuli could not say it. Yuli seemed like a person shrouded in a hazy veil. This situation surprised him, but all the researchers in Konoha had no research results on this, gently comforting Yule. Soon, Yule actually fell asleep under Danzo's comfort, but his eyes seemed to have changed a little. However, Danzo did not care too much about it at this time. He picked up Yule, refused the help of others, and took him back to his room. Have a good sleep, child. Everything will be fine. Green, sir, I'm here. Quing's figure appeared silently behind Danzo. He looked at Yuli, who was sleeping on the bed with a frown on her brows, and a trace of heartache flashed in his eyes. Call. Yuhishinana. Yes, Quing nodded slightly and disappeared from the room again in an instant under the bright and dazzling light. Yule was still sleeping, with no sign of waking up. Danzo gently closed his eyes, paused for a moment, then slowly opened them again, sighing helplessly. Sir, what do you want me to do? Well, I want you to create a dream for Yuli to fill in the part of his lost memory. Can you do it? I will do my best, sir. Yuhishinana did not delve into the reasons why Danzo did this. To him, all he had to do was to obey orders. Yule, Yuhi. Minato first called Yule's name softly, and when Yule was awakened, just opened her eyes and her eyes were still in a daze, he immediately cast an illusion. Dream weaving. As the spell fell, a strange power emerged from Yuhishinana and quickly enveloped Yuli. The hands quickly changed various gestures, and finally formed a mysterious and complex seal. Along with this action, a thin layer of sweat appeared on Zihima's face, and a strange illusion gradually unfolded in Yule's mind. In this illusion, Yuli remembered a quiet and peaceful fishing village, where there were kind grandmas, amiable grandpas, and people who lived in poverty but were full of laughter. However, the beautiful scene was soon broken by the sudden war. The ruthless flames of war swept the entire village, and the cruel ninjas of the Sands village slaughtered innocent people. The village was massacred and my father died on the spot trying to save himself. Later, Orochimaru and Tsunade appeared. They brought Yule to Konoha, and a new story began to happen. As a genius of the Yuhi clan, Yuhi Makoto has made great achievements since he was recruited by Danzo. This is because he has his own unique understanding of illusions, which is based on memory. However, this also requires a prerequisite. That is, the recipient does not have too much resistance. Danzo did not completely modify Yule's memory. In fact, he only made some minor adjustments, or he simply did not bother to change Yule's way of thinking. For Danzo, his only goal is to stop Yule from suffering. He knows that if Yule's memory is completely tampered with, it may cause more uncertainty and memory conflicts. On the contrary, a truly clever lie should be 9 true and 1 false, which makes it easier for people to believe. After an hour of preparation, Yuhishinana finally completed the spell. Trembling all over, with a weak body, he carefully placed Yule on the ground and watched her fall asleep again. At this time, he was already sweating profusely. Obviously, it was a very difficult task for him to weave such a long and complicated dream. Phew. Sir, I have accomplished my mission. Well, good job. Back off. Yes, Yuhi. Minato bowed slightly to Danzo and walked out the door. Danzo moved gently as he covered Yule with the quilt beside him and gently stroked his forehead. The roughness of the calluses between his fingers made Yule frown, and then, as if he sensed something, he turned towards Danzo's direction. Have a good sleep. Whispering softly, Danzo took Watanabe Aoki out of Yule's room and returned to the office. At this time, the food on the office table had already been removed and replaced by a pile of documents and files. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62. Why, Mother-in-law? Have a good sleep. Everything will be fine tomorrow, sir. If that's the case, why don't you let someone else deal with this, Midoriko? Watanabe. Quinn felt a little confused. For this kind of thing, wouldn't it be better to just solve the source directly? It would have been fine if he hadn't paid attention to Midori before, but now that Yuli had noticed her, it was naturally different. Perhaps even Yule didn't know that Midoriko's identity had been exposed long ago, but Danzo had never told Yule, only he can do this himself. Yuli needs to overcome the weakness in his heart. At this point, Danzo's eyes became a little cold and stern. He is the successor of the Root. People of the Root can be gentle, but they must never be cowardly in front of the enemy. Yes, sir. Bending down steadily. Watanabe Quinn glanced at Yuli with heartache in his eyes. The time on the wall is ticking. The next day, Yuli woke up as if nothing had happened. In the following days, he still went to Grandma Midori's house once a day. Yule, aren't you busy during this period? Mother-in-law, I will be going to the land of Earth to carry out a mission soon. I will leave tomorrow and will probably not be back in a short time, so I thought I would come to see you more often in the next 2 days. Haha, just do your thing and don't worry about me. You can come back later if you have nothing else to do. Haha. Midori lowered her head slightly, a gleam in her eyes, then she looked up at Yuli with a smile on her face. I have something else to do today. I'll leave first, mother-in-law. Well, go ahead, business is more important. Leaving the alley, the smile on Yuli's face disappeared. Mother-in-law, this is your last chance. After spending a long time with the old man these days, Yuli has confirmed that Akima Miyoko is definitely not an ordinary person. She is too normal. However, it is precisely because of this normality that she can maintain that she is exposed. A singer uses her voice all year round and plays music at the same time, so the condition of her voice and fingers should not be like this. Even though Yuli did not feel the chakra breath from Grandma Midoriko, but she is too healthy. Even though she pretends to be an old person in her daily life, it is impossible for an old person of her age to do everything so steadily. Late at night, Yuli observed Akima Miyoko's movements from afar. Akima Miyoko was lying on the bed, completely motionless, but Yuli did not relax at all. The night passed without incident. After brushing off the morning dew on his body, Yuli even felt that he had indeed wronged Midori. However, Yuli did not show up directly. From that day on, he no longer appeared in Midori's sight, but observed silently. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, Grandma Midori seems to be feeling better and takes walks in different directions every day. Looking at the points where Miyoko walked, Yuli's face became colder and colder. Mother-in-law, don't make the mistake. Closing his eyes, he recalled the route Midori had taken over the past few days. At first glance, it seemed like just a slightly longer walk, but when Yuli expanded the map, he discovered that there was a military area along each route. Miyoko, you look good these days. The young man who came to see you a few days ago was your grandson. In the evening, Midori came back from a leisurely walk and happened to meet her neighbor in the alley, Granny Inari, who was lying leisurely on a rattan chair. She greeted Midori with a smile on her face. Haha, no, but Yule is really a good kid. There was a smile in her eyes, but somehow, Midori felt her heart tremble, and she suddenly felt a little flustered when Yuli was mentioned. I have to go home and cook. Haha, come over for tea some other day. Okay, I'll wait for you. His pace did not change. He still walked leisurely and slowly back home, sitting on the rattan chair, gently stroking Ahui. A hint of hesitation flashed in her eyes, until the sun completely set and the moon rose above the branches. Midoriko suddenly realized that night had come. I don't seem to have enough time to cook today. Looking up, I see a few wisps of clouds floating in the distance. It seems a bit cold today. At 3:40 in the morning, the whole Konoha was shrouded in a hazy and quiet atmosphere. The moon in the sky quietly disappeared, and the cold wind kept blowing into the clothes. The only thing left on the streets was the silence and coldness that penetrated deep into the bones at this time. The night was almost over and it was the darkest moment before the day appeared. Even the insects in the treetops stopped their noisy chirping. The air was filled with a fresh scent of earth and grass, and drops of morning dew stained Yuli's hair. He had been waiting here all night. Mother-in-law. Why? With deep disappointment in his eyes, Yuli stared silently into the distance. In the narrow and deep alley, a vague figure was quietly leaving, as if blending into the darkness. This mysterious figure walked further and further away, and finally arrived at the edge of Konoha village, under an inconspicuous tree. After arriving at his destination, he carefully buried an object under an inconspicuous tree and left an almost imperceptible mark on the trunk. The place where Akima Miyoko lived was not far from the edge of Konoha. At this moment, her every move was completely unlike that of a woman in her 60s. She was agile and quick. Looking at Grandma Midori from a distance, Yuli did not say anything, but just recorded all his observations and judgments, which needed to be entered into the files with a barely perceptible sigh, so subtle that it was almost undetectable. Yuli left quietly like a ghost. As for the things that Midori had buried and the informant behind her, the root members would deal with them. It was just that he suddenly felt a little tired now, and he wanted to take a rest. In the evening, Yuli came to Midori's house again, bringing pastries for Midori. Midori was having dinner at this time, and Ahua beside her was also preparing her own delicious fish. As if sensing something, Ahua suddenly raised her head, her green eyes met Yuli's. Without hesitation, she put down the mouth-watering fish in a bowl, then quickly took steps and ran towards Yuli like a gust of wind. In the blink of an eye, Ahua had arrived in front of Yuli and squatted obediently at his feet. Meow you. Lee still had a faint smile on his face. He slowly bent down, gently stretched out his arms, and carefully held Ahua in his arms. Then, he gently stroked Ahua's soft hair with his fingers, and Ahua enjoyed the warm and comfortable touch. She liked this human massage method very much, really liked it. However, unlike in the past, this time, Grandma Miyoko did not stand up to welcome Yul as usual. There was an indescribable strange expression on her face. It seemed that she was unwilling, but also that she had calmly accepted some kind of fate. I saw her chewing the food slowly and her movements were particularly slow and rhythmic, as if everything was under her control. Yuli looked at Midoriko and also saw the food on next to the dining table. She smiled gently. It seemed that Midoriko's mother-in-law had already foreseen Yuli's arrival and placed the food on in front of her in advance. Yuli was not surprised at all. He stared at Grandma Midori silently, his eyes as calm as water, without the slightest ripple. After a while, he smiled, walked to the food on, knelt on his knees, and sat down upright. Gently put down the cake in your hand. At this moment, on the food table in front of Yuli, facing him, was a cup of steaming hot tea. Apparently, the cup of tea had just been filled. Yuli reached out and picked up the cup, shook it slightly, looked at the clear and transparent tea in the cup reflecting her pupils, and smiled, but without the gentleness of the past. He raised his head and suddenly showed a brilliant smile to Grandma Miyoko. Then, Yul raised his head and drank the whole cup of tea in one gulp. We're out of Sakura Jade cake today, so I can only bring you something else, you. Lee was talking to herself. Zio. Yul, aren't you afraid that I poisoned it, you? Lee paused. You won't. The topic fell into awkward silence again. At this moment, there was no other sound except for the occasional comfortable snoring of Ahua and the rustling sound of the half-dead, half-living, half-withered Huang Jiao above her head caused by the breeze when she came back from her walk in the evening but still hadn't received any feedback. Midori knew in her heart that she had finally suffered the consequences from then on. She already knew that she might not be able to survive this day. However, even so, facing today's dinner, Midori still behaved as she did in the past, maintaining the elegant demeanor that a celebrity should have. Gradually, night fell and darkness enveloped the entire earth. The bright moonlight sprinkled down like a veil, illuminating a silvery white world. At this moment, Ahua in his arms suddenly let out a meow sound, then struggled to break free from Yuli's arms, quickly got into Midori's arms, and gently licked the back of Midori's wrinkled hand, as if she had sensed something strange, and returned to Midori without hesitation. Yuli was stunned. After a moment, the smile on his face slowly disappeared, replaced by a pair of cold eyes. Why, mother-in-law, who knows, maybe I'm tired? Maybe the long time has made me slack? Or maybe. Chapter 63 Rose cake is not sweet at all. Finally, she gazed deeply at Yuli, and the tenderness in Akima Miyoko's eyes remained the same as before, without any change. Thank you, Yul. At this last moment, you are still willing to accompany me. The pair of hands, full of traces of time, were trembling a little. He opened the pastry box tremblingly, motioned Yuli to eat too, and gently took out a piece from it. A brighter smile gradually appeared on the corners of her mouth, but then her face suddenly became paler, as if all the blood had been lost. I'm really tired of living this life with a mask on. Maybe your appearance is God's will, and it brings me relief. Midoriko's voice was as light as a gust of wind and seemed like it would disappear at any moment. I have asked myself countless times why I came to this place. I wanted to escape, but I couldn't. Later I realized that this was my mission, that I could not escape, and my destination. I will eventually die in Konoha village, so this can be considered a relief. At least, I can finally go find my sister. Having said this, she gently stroked Ahua's hand and couldn't help but tremble slightly. In fact, my parents sold my sister and me cruelly because we had a younger brother who needed to be raised. I can't say whether it was luck or misfortune. I was accepted by the village and became an intelligence officer trained by the village, but my sister was sent to the Kabuki theater and became a big star that everyone pays attention to. Haha, a big star. These stories are not entirely made up by me. Most of them are my sister's real-life experiences. That man did exist, but he did force his way into my sister's life after getting drunk, and then he took away the money she had worked so hard to save to redeem herself. The big boss is not a fiction, but Midoriko's eyes were filled with endless sorrow and longing, as if she was seeing the distant past through time at this point. Akima Miyoko's mood suddenly became unusually calm, but her eyes began to become a little blurry, as if she was lost in deep memories. At the same time, her face, which was already as pale as paper, now looked even paler and duller. Yuli was still kneeling in the same place, slowly raising his hand, signaling the root members who had quietly appeared behind him at some point not to act rashly. Then, Miyoko continued in a low and hoarse voice, "My poor sister did not survive the bowl of terrible abortion water. She died at the hands of that despicable old dog in the Kabuki theater, that beast. Haha, Yule, guess what their final outcome was? As she continued to speak, Miyoko's entire state suddenly changed dramatically. Her face miraculously turned rosy, and her hands, which had been shaking constantly, gradually calmed down. However, an extremely strange expression appeared on her face, and her voice trembled slightly. Yuli could feel her excitement. "I killed that man with my own hands. I cut his skin, one knife at a time, and knocked out his teeth one by one. I stuffed pieces of his flesh into his mouth to prevent him from biting off his tongue because he couldn't bear the pain." Grandma Midori's face was flushed. She did not eat the cake directly. Instead, she held it up to the sky. The deep red color of this rose cake looked like solidified blood. "I cut his filthy genitals into 483 pieces and poured all of them into his rectum in front of him. Finally, I threw him next to the ant nest. I watched those hungry ants slowly climb up his body and drill into his flesh, making him feel the torment of being gnawed by thousands of ants. And that old dog, haha, you haven't seen that scene, it's really beautiful. At that moment, I felt like my sister's soul was redeemed. Mother-in-law, you." Lee's eyes were filled with pity. He didn't feel sorry for the two beasts, but seeing his mother-in-law like this, he felt a little bit sorry for her. "Yule, I know you are a good child. Can you help Grandma with one last favor? Mother-in-law, you say, you." Lee did not agree directly, but he straightened his back with a serious look on his face. "I know that the people in Konoha's interrogation department are very powerful, and I also know that they will definitely examine my body. I only ask you, after you finish the interrogation, can you bury my mother-in-law's body at the foot of the nearby Huangjiao Pass?" He turned back slowly. At this time, blood was already oozing out of Midoriko's 7 orifices. She looked extremely terrifying. She grinned and smiled at Yuli, although it looked very scary. Yuli saw in it the everlasting gentleness and a hint of pleading from her mother-in-law. "Let's bury it on the withered side. It will be considered as accompanying the old friend. Well, mother-in-law, I promise you." Master, standing next to Yuli, the root ninja who had always maintained the image of a transparent man, couldn't help himself. "You know, in this world even corpses can speak, and a lot of information can be dug out. If Yuli agrees to this, there will be a risk of being exposed." Waving his hand, Yuli slowly turned around and glanced coldly at the root ninja behind him. That look was no longer as gentle and kind as usual, but full of indifference and irresistibility. "However, perhaps Grandma can only turn into a raging fire and accompany Huangjiao forever." Midoriko shook her head painfully, and after using her last bit of strength to look deeply at Yuli, she slowly closed her eyes, which were originally clear but had become cloudy, and the sound of her mumbling became smaller and weaker. "It's okay. Yule, you are really very gentle." Midori sat quietly on the futon, motionless, like a sculpture. The rose cake in my hand fell to the ground with a dull sound. Time passed by minute until night fell. A bright moon hung high in the sky, and its bright silver light fell on the weathered face of my mother-in-law. After a long time, Yuli stood up, walked with heavy steps to the side of Grandma Midori, and carefully took out a white handkerchief from her arms. He gently wiped the blood off the mother-in-law's face over and over again. His movements were extremely gentle and delicate, as if he was afraid of waking up the sleeping mother-in-law at this time. The blood on my mother-in-law's face had already solidified. After a long time, when the blood on Grandma Midori's face was completely wiped clean, she looked exceptionally peaceful and tranquil under the moonlight. Yuli stood by, watching all this silently, with mixed feelings in his heart. Then, Yuli bent down, stretched out her arms, and gently picked up Ahui, who had been guarding her mother-in-law and constantly licking the back of her hand with her tongue. As if trying to wake her up, Hahua suddenly turned around and let out a sharp and piercing cry. She struggled desperately against Yuli's arms. Her sharp claws stretched out in an instant, mercilessly leaving several deep and shallow scars on the back of Yuli's hand. Feeling the pain, Yuli subconsciously let go and stood there blankly, watching Ahua disappear into the bushes. Looking at the wound on his hand, Yuli had not come back to his senses until he was awakened by the root ninja behind him. "Master, are you okay?" "It's okay, take it back, try not to let grandma's body suffer too much, and finally give the ashes to me." The lifelessness in his eyes gradually returned to normal, and when he spoke the last words, there was a hint of sharpness and indifference. "Yes." At this moment, the root ninja seemed to see Danzo's figure, and an indescribable awe surged in his heart. He quickly bent down and nodded. "Take a rose cake from the cake box, put it in your mouth, and taste it carefully. Rose flavor, not sweet at all." Without looking back at the spot, Yuli stood up, raised his head, and glanced at the sky. It was gloomy, and the moon had been covered by clouds. "At some point get up and leave. This matter is over." In a blink of an eye, 3 days later, Yuli buried Grandma Midori on the dead side of Huangjianoya as promised. But strangely, the section that was originally full of vitality and lush greenery was losing leaves crazily in the past few days, and the branches were gradually becoming dry and waterless. Huangjianoya seems to have gone with Grandma Midori. A few days later, today is the 7th day after Midori's death, and it is also Yuli's last visit to the old lady. Standing quietly in front of the grave, she suddenly sensed the breath behind her. Yuli did not look back, but silently placed the cake in her hand in front of the tombstone. Inside was the Sakura jade cake from the Furukubo family. Meow, a shrill cat cry came from the bushes not far away, followed by a series of rustling sounds that gradually faded away. "Is that Ahua?" A hesitant voice broke the silence. "MRS. Miyoko, how could she have passed away? She was in good health a while ago." "Mother-in-law." 3 figures approached and came to Yuli's side. Several sad voices sounded at the same time, as if they were asking questions or expressing emotion. Yuli did not look back, but the coldness in her eyes grew a little more. "Maybe Grandma can live longer, but I killed her." Several people who heard the sound couldn't help but scream. They quickly turned their heads and cast their gazes at Yuli, who had a cold face, their eyes full of confusion and shock. Yuli gently patted the non-existent dust on his shoulders, then slowly turned around and glanced at his friends standing beside him with cold eyes, including Minato, Kushina, and Hyuga Hisaha. There was still a lingering coldness in his eyes, but he didn't say a word. He just turned around and left silently, walking out of Midoriko's courtyard. Swish as a breeze blew by, a few yellow leaves fell from the tall yellow horn tree in the yard. This is the spring of Konoha. It is also the winter in Huangjianoya. Chapter 64, War. The dead leaves slowly fell, gently touching the ground, making a few faint and crisp sounds. These subtle sounds were like raindrops dripping into the hearts of Kushina and the others. The cold air in the air, accompanied by the breeze, brushed across the skin like a sharp blade, bringing waves of chill. Kushina raised her head unconsciously, and the eyes of Jiu beside her seemed somewhat blank at this moment. Whether far or near, the shrill cat cry seemed particularly sharp and piercing in this silent environment, like the harsh sound of chalk scratching on a blackboard, making people feel uncomfortable. The fallen leaves on the ground rolled a few times in the wind, as if inadvertently separating Yuli from Shuman and the other two. It seemed as if they had gone on different paths without knowing when. "Why, you?" Lee turned around and looked at the people with different expressions at this time. Suddenly, the corners of her mouth rose, revealing a gentle and bright smile. This smile was like the warm sunshine in spring, warm and kind, just like before. Nothing seems to have changed, however, only they themselves know that under this seemingly unchanged appearance, there are already too many changes and helplessness hidden. Their friendship has not changed, it's just that the path is different. The war is about to begin, everyone, be prepared, but don't die. Turning around, he did not explain to them why he killed Grandma Midori, but out of consideration for his friends, he still revealed to them the information he got from Danzo. Minato and the others are his very good friends, and they are also the anchor of his salvation. Even though his path is different from theirs, deep down he still doesn't want to see any of his friends encounter misfortune or accident. After hearing Yuli's last words, Minato's eyes flashed with a look of realization. Among the 4 people, he was the one who had the least contact with Miyoko. As a semi-outsider, What he could observe was naturally different from others, and he could look at the problem in a more rational way, patting Kushina's shoulder gently. Minato sighed at this moment. Yuli had already left and disappeared into the night, leaving the three of them standing there thinking about the profound meaning of the words just now. After Minato finished his analysis, the atmosphere became dull again. Everyone was silent, standing there motionless as if they had their own thoughts. Kushina raised her head and looked at the yellow horn tree in front of her, which had become somewhat dry in just a few days, with memories in her eyes. Grandma Midori did not have a tombstone, or rather, the yellow horn tree in front of her was her tombstone. As night fell, the bright moon hung high in the sky, casting its silver light on the earth. Accompanied by the sounds of frogs, insects, and birds, Jiujiu and the other two began to look for Ahua's traces. Ahua, ever since she broke free from Yuli's arms that day, has never appeared in anyone's sight again. Did you find it? No, no. Ahua, where are you? Suddenly, a nimble and agile figure jumped out from the grass in front like lightning, and climbed up the branches of Huangjianhua at an astonishing speed. That was the direction where Midoriko's grandmother was buried. Then, the figure lowered its head and looked down at Minato and others who noticed it. Meow! A clear and familiar cat's cry came into people's ears. Ahua? Ahua! Kushina's face was filled with surprise and worry at this time. Ahua looked a little thin, with an inexplicable wild charm. As a pet cat who has been spoiled and pampered since childhood after a few days of training in the wild, Ahua has obviously gradually adapted to this new living environment. You know, it is a noble jade-faced raccoon dog. Under the cover of night, Ahua's pupils flickered with a faint green light, like two mysterious gems. The aura it exuded was no longer as gentle and kind as before, but was filled with a wild flavor. Ahua, come with me. Jiu opened his arms, his eyes showing endless expectation. The figure with green pupils on the yellow horn tree was clearly reflected in his pale pupils. Ahua licked her hair gently, just stared at the three people below silently, and turned her head slightly to express her refusal. Then, it rubbed its furry head gently against the yellow-horned eagle next to it, with deep attachment. Meow! With a mournful and gentle hum, as if it was reluctance or farewell, it leaped lightly and landed on the ground. At this time, several wild cats with dim light in their eyes walked out from the bushes not far away. Meow! Who whimpered softly towards her companions, and finally turned her head to look at Kushina and Hisahi, and left with her companions, disappearing into the vast night. Today is a day of farewell, as Yuli said. The shadow of war gradually enveloped the earth, and the Iwagakure village became the fuse that ignited this storm. Tensions between the two sides are growing as skirmishes escalate along the border. However, what was unexpected was that the Iwagakure village, which had been claiming to resolve the problem peacefully, suddenly revealed its ugly face and launched an attack, wiping out more than a dozen Konoha border teams in one fell swoop. They advanced like hungry wolves pouncing on their prey, penetrating dozens of miles into the border of the Fire Nation. Such blatant and reckless acts of aggression have undoubtedly completely angered Konoha village. Faced with such provocation and aggression, war is inevitable, so, the Konoha village began to make intensive preparations in the Hokage's office. After careful consideration, Sarutobi Hiruzen appointed Orochimaru as the commander-in-chief and Narashikakayo as the chief of staff, and also sent Tsunade and Jiraiya to assist in the battle. Thousands of ninjas quickly assembled and set out within a day, rushing to the front line of the Fire Country in a mighty force. It is worth mentioning that Hatake Tsukumo did not appear on the list of players going on the expedition as the White Fang of Konoha, a legendary figure that the enemies were terrified of. Sarutobi Hiruzen knew his importance. Therefore, he specially arranged for him to stay in Konoha to prevent the Cunning Sands village from taking the opportunity to make trouble and bring unnecessary trouble to Konoha. After all, in the face of external temptations, showing military force is one thing, but necessary defensive forces are also extremely important. Any negligence may lead to catastrophic consequences. With Hatake Tsukumo guarding the rear, Sarutobi Hiruzen could lead his army out with confidence and fully deal with the life and death battle before him. Konoha's enemies have never been just the Iwagakure village. Time flies, and several years have passed since the Second World War. The five major countries regained their vitality and strength. At this time, a new generation of young people also grew up like mushrooms after rain and gradually became the pillars of the village. War is always a touchstone of cruelty and ruthlessness, but this is the role of the touchstone. Despite the large number of deaths, for the top leaders of various countries, as long as one or more elites can be cultivated, all the sacrifices are worth it. After all, in a world where the strong prey on the weak, only those with strong power can dominate their destiny. This war is unavoidable. As long as other countries still harbor the ambition of hegemony and want to devour the fat piece of meat of the Fire Nation, war is only a matter of time. Many people are well aware of this, including Sarutobi Hiruzen and Danzo, who see it very clearly. What they didn't expect was that the Hidden Rock village was so eager to stir up trouble. Haha, are they afraid that the new generation of the village will really grow up? Sarutobi Hiruzen stood on the top of the Hokage's office building, with his hands behind his back and his other hand holding a pipe, puffing away leisurely. The smoke rose up, as if carrying his thoughts far away. He stared in the direction of the land of earth and the hidden Iwagakure village with a deep and firm look, as if there was a person there who was looking at him across the village. Old man, you can't help it. Behind him were the captains and vice captains of the Anbu. Since you want to play, then come on. War can't be ended just because you wanted to. The voice was low and powerful, as if suppressing endless determination and pride. It seems like he hasn't been this heroic for a long time, ever since my teacher sacrificed himself to protect me and others from retreating, ever since I put on this robe, ever since time has carved traces on my face. He chuckled. The peace that Konoha had worked so hard to maintain lasted only a few short years, and now it was once again drawn into the vortex of war. But fortunately, the younger generation of Konoha has now entered a stage where their strength is rapidly improving. Let this cruel war become an opportunity for them to grow thoroughly and be baptized. The captains of the Anbu behind him were silent, but their eyes were still firm. When the war came, it was not only Orochimaru and the frontline troops who shouldered the heavy responsibility. As the elites of the Anbu, they also had their own missions to complete. "You'll will also go with the root team." Suddenly, a deep voice came from behind, interrupting Sarutobi Hiruzen's thoughts. He turned around and saw Danzo leading several root ninjas. Watanabe O and Yamanaka Kase and other close followers followed closely behind, obviously having already prepared for this action. As the Dark Lord of Konoha, Danzo would not stand idly by in the face of such a situation. He knew the importance of this war and understood that now was not the time to be petty. After this battle, the name of Yulfing Nio will surely be feared throughout the ninja world. Danzo's words revealed his trust and expectations for Yule, the wind bird. Where will the other kids lag behind? Konoha will once again be famous in the ninja world. Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled, feeling a surge of pride in his heart. He believed that after this fierce battle, not only Yule, but many young ninjas in Konoha village would stand out and become famous. Namokaze Minato, Uzumaki Kushina, Hyuga Hisawa, Uchiha Sekis, the children of the Ino Shikajo family, and the new generation of other families. Seeing them is like seeing our past selves, isn't it? Once upon a time, the second Hokage Senju Tobirama accepted several of his disciples, including himself, Shimura Danzo, Mito Kadoen, Udatane Kaharu, Uchiha Kagami, Akimichi Tofu. Chapter 65. Before the war. At that time, we were given the task at a critical moment. We were full of ambition, vigor and high spirits, and vowed to complete the teacher's unfinished wishes and ambitions. No, Yuli is more talented than us. He will definitely lead Konoha to a higher and farther place. Danzo's tone was extremely firm. He was full of confidence and expectations for Yule, and firmly believed that he would achieve brilliant achievements that would surpass himself and even Orochimaru, and in the near future, this world will eventually belong to these young people. Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled slightly and didn't say much. He just stared quietly into the distance, casting his eyes on the entire Konoha village. At this moment, smoke from Konoha's cooking fires rose up, and the streets and alleys were filled with the sounds of children playing happily and the hawking of vendors. Don't these warm and peaceful scenes before our eyes confirm the beautiful vision we have been looking forward to for a long time? Konoha will never allow others to trample and bully you. It will, perhaps. It is because we have been silent for too long, but it doesn't matter. Next, let the entire ninja world see whether Konoha is something that those jackals and hyenas can covet. Everyone, at the border of the Fire Nation battlefield, flags fluttered, drums thundered, and a large-scale mobilization meeting was being carried out in an intense and orderly manner on the temporary platform. Orochimaru stood side by side with several other important figures. They stood as tall as pine trees, and their expressions were solemn and serious. Although their voices were low, they carried a kind of majesty that could not be ignored, and they were clearly heard throughout the audience. There were 3,000 ninjas gathered below the stage, and each of them had a different expression on his face. Some look frightened, as if they are terrified of the upcoming battle. Some are full of passion, eager to take this opportunity to achieve success. Some are expressionless, As if everything around them has nothing to do with them. There are all kinds of people, and Yuli stood quietly in the front row under the stage. His face was as calm as water, and he didn't care about the noisy environment and people's complicated emotions at this moment. He was stroking the extremely sharp tang sword in his hand without distraction. As a ninja from the root, he came here with a special mission. And the battlefield he faced was not entirely a place for head-on confrontation. Looking up, the sky was gloomy and dark, just like the depressing and dreary atmosphere at the moment, which was suffocating. A cold wind blew, rolling up a few fallen leaves, adding a bit of bleak feeling. The Hidden Rock Village tore up the peace agreement without authorization, wantonly slaughtered our border ninjas, and frantically plundered our country's resources. They were the first to violate the principles of peace and provoke this cruel war. Orochimaru's words exploded like thunder, echoing in everyone's ears. Next, they will slaughter your families, plunder your property, trample your land, and try to plant the flag of the Earth Kingdom on the land of the Fire Kingdom. Then, he suddenly raised his voice and shouted, "Tell me, do you agree?" The hoarse voice turned violent, like a sharp sword piercing the sky and piercing people's hearts. All the soldiers were awakened instantly. They stood up straight and shouted in unison, "Disagree, disagree, disagree." The sound was deafening and resounded through the sky. For a moment, morale was greatly boosted, and the people who were originally a little anxious were encouraged and became determined. Yuli narrowed his eyes slightly as he watched the scene in front of him, secretly sighing in his heart that these soldiers might not know what real war means, but no matter what, he will do his best to complete the task and protect the people around him. "Tell me, what are we going to do?" The voice had a unique hoarseness, and in this depressing atmosphere, it ignited the anger of many ninjas. "Kill back, let those Iwagakure bastards see how powerful we are. Fight back, what the hell?" The crowd below the stage was filled with outrage, but upon seeing this, Orochimaru curled up the corners of his mouth into a slight smile. "Since they want war, give them war. Let them know we, Konoha, are never easy to mess with. War, war, war. Let Konoha become the ruler of this war. Wars have never stopped in this land." Even Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage of Konoha, who is hailed as the god of ninja, failed to truly realize this ambition when he was still alive. He did maintain stability for a few years, but immediately after his death, the First Ninja World War broke out. Peace is always based on nuclear peace, and many more. Nuclear peace? What is this? Yuli scratched his head. Some unknown things kept popping up in his mind. Then, Yuli ignored this little episode at this moment. The Hidden Rock Village was like a giant beast, entrenched in the border area between the Grass Country and the Fire Country. Although its vanguard had successfully invaded the Fire Country border 10 kilometers away, the place they were in was not an ideal choice. Taking the distance into account, the Konoha ninjas would reach the battlefield faster, so after a fierce battle and looting, this army wisely chose to retreat afterwards. They quickly set up camp at the border of the land of grass and were ready for battle, clearly fully prepared for a protracted war. At the same time, a steady stream of reinforcements from the Hidden Rock Village were also rushing in, and their expected arrival time would be almost the same as that of the Konoha army. However, in every war, the weak countries that suffer the most are always those caught between the big countries. Just like this land right now, the Grass Kingdom, it was established only because the Fire Kingdom and the Earth Kingdom needed a buffer. Looking at the huge sand table in front of him, Orochimaru's eyes were cold and deep, and his expression was serious and solemn. The Land of Fire is located in the center of many countries, with unique rich resources and a superior geographical location. However, precisely because of this, neighboring countries are all eyeing this fertile and rich fat meat with eager eyes. This land happens to be surrounded by several countries. If it were not for such a special geographical location, Sarutobi Hiruzen would definitely send all his ninjas out to participate in the battle. In that case, Konoha would easily win the war. However, this is obviously not realistic. Konoha also needs to retain enough military forces to guard its homeland and prevent those old guys with ulterior motives from taking advantage of the situation and stealing the house. After all, no one can guarantee that they will not be destroyed when fighting outside. As for the resources and wealth of other countries, Konoha simply doesn't care about them. Because of this, Hatake Tsukumo did not appear on the front line in this battle. After all, whether in terms of qualifications or strength, as long as he was present on the battlefield, the position of commander-in-chief would definitely be his. From the perspective of military strength, We are currently at a disadvantage. The Rock Ninja have already gathered most of their main forces together. With their current strength, it is too difficult to confront them head-on. If we continue to stick to the previous defensive strategy, I am afraid that our defense line will soon be breached by the enemy. Inside the tent, Narulojing was the first to speak out. He held a wooden stick in his hand and pointed directly at the location of the Iwagakure camp on the sand table. As the head of the Nara clan, it was his duty to stand up at this critical moment. But if we shrink our defenses now, then our already smaller forces than the enemy will find it even more difficult to resist the frontal invasion of the Rock Ninja. Zihi. Anzan, who was sitting next to him, stroked his prickly beard and said worriedly. Narashikakayo gently rubbed his temple. Currently, both sides were unaware of the other's military strength and high-end combat power. This was both a disadvantage and an advantage. There are quite a few high-end fighters coming from Konoha at this time. Tsunade also began to add, bringing the battle line into our territory is actually a feasible strategy. In this way, we can make full use of the geographical advantage. At the same time, because the opponent's battle line is stretched, its material supply will also face greater challenges. Nara Lujing turned to look at Tsunade. If the battle line goes deep into our country, the scope of damage will be infinitely expanded. Unless there is no better way, I do not agree to do this. Tsunade nodded but remained silent, her eyes fixed on the map as if she was thinking about something. After all, Orochimaru is the commander-in-chief of this battle. Others can only provide opinions and suggestions, and the final decision still has to be made by Orochimaru. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a slightly hoarse voice, "In this war, what we have to do is to completely defeat the opponent and make everyone clearly realize that the dignity of Konoha village cannot be violated in any way. Based on this premise, we need to do it quickly. My idea is to send a large army to attack them first, taking advantage of their unpreparedness, and at the same time send secret troops to cut off their supply." Although it is very crude, what Orochimaru said is true. The pace of this war needs to be accelerated, so that the enemy can be caught off guard. Narulojing's brain was working rapidly, and at this time the few of them were still constantly perfecting their tactics. On the other hand, discussions were underway in the Iwagakure base on the eve of the war. Konoha's defense is too stretched out. As long as we concentrate our strength and attack just one point, we can gradually weaken them. A middle-aged man with a rough and fleshy face said gloomily. His eyes were cold and ruthless, as if he had a deep hatred for Konoha. Orochimaru would never be so stupid. It is inevitable to shrink the defense line. We now have the advantage in manpower. We can send a team to sneak behind enemy lines and cut off their supply lines. Another man suggested with a grim expression. Konoha has many supplier routes. It is almost impossible to completely cut them off, but it is still possible to cause them some trouble. That's right, let's leave this matter to the demolition team. Ha. Ha. A cold laugh was heard. There was a man sitting nearby, fiddling with a sharp kunai in his hand. He had a cunning look on his face and sneered, "I really want to see what kind of terrified expressions those ninjas of Konoha will show when they find a raging fire behind them." Another person added, "That's right. Our demolition team can definitely cause them great panic and deterrence. If we can get close cooperation from the assassination team, it will be even more perfect." That's absolutely right. With the secret help of the assassination team, the demolition team will be more useful. Someone else echoed, "In this operation, we must let those guys in Konoha feel the strength of our Iwagakure firsthand. We must tear off a piece of flesh from them." Everyone agreed, and everyone's face showed full of confidence and determination. In this way, the two sides launched a tense and extremely fierce discussion on the strategic deployment of this war, and finally reached a consensus in this upcoming war. Both Konoha village and Iwagakure village send a large number of Jonin to participate. But Jonin are already high-end combat forces in the village, and the real main force is actually those Chunins and Genins who are slightly weaker in strength and relatively weak in self-protection ability. As the lowest level existence on the battlefield, they are often more likely to become victims of war, and the casualty rate is always high. This war is the largest conflict in recent years. Not only Yuli and other students who had graduated 2 years ago, but also the Jinan who had just graduated from the ninja school joined in this war. They will face their first baptism of fire in their lives. War. You. Lee stroked the hilt of the knife quietly. A true warrior must know his weapon well. Lying on the grass, his body completely relaxed, his eyes were always looking at the bright moon hanging high in the night sky. His eyes were as cold as ice, without any emotional fluctuations, but underneath the coldness, there seemed to be a deep desire hidden. War, you. Lee whispered softly, and his voice was particularly clear in the silent night. The moonlight fell on his cold face, reflecting a strange excitement. This excitement was a bit weird and strange, which made people curious compared to other young generations. Yule has an unusual experience. He was born in the land of rain. If Orochimaru and Tsunade hadn't brought him back to Konoha village, he might have died long ago because of this. War is both familiar and strange to Yuli. Dad, Mom, Grandma, everyone in the village, he understands the cruelty and ruthlessness of war more deeply than other new generations, and is more aware of the training and tempering that war brings to people. War is a paradise for the strong, and only those with sufficient strength can survive, but for the weak, it is tantamount to hell. However, no matter how difficult the environment is, Yuli has a firm belief in his heart. I want to live, I must live. I want to witness the wonders of the world. Once, Orochimaru asked Yule what his purpose in becoming a ninja was. At that time, Yuli answered without hesitation, live well, gain strength, and explore the truth of the world. This is his truest thought and the source of his motivation to keep working hard and pursuing strength. He no longer knew why he wanted to explore the truth of the world, but the ultimate command to survive had been engraved in his bones. Only by living can he think about other things and pursue other things. He took a long breath, took out a bottle of nutrient solution from the tactical bag on his waist and poured it into his mouth. It smells like rotten leaves. Up to now, his taste buds have not been able to adapt to the speed at which the guys in the research department develop new flavors. I can't stand it. As Danzo's grandson and Orochimaru's disciple, he does have some small privileges at certain times. For example, he can relax here alone at this moment. He took a long breath, shook out all the mess in his mind, pushed his face upwards with his hands, and soon, a friendly and gentle signature smile appeared on Yuli's face again. His body was trembling slightly, as if he was excited, or as if he was welcoming this ferocious beast that had just opened its bloodshot eyes. I don't know how many people will come this time, so, come on. Number 66 Night Talk, Gift. A bright moon hangs high in the sky, casting its cool light and enveloping the entire earth. Countless stars embellish the clear and cloudless night sky, like dazzling gems inlaid in a vast sky. The breeze blew gently from a distant place, creating layers of green ripples on the vast grassland and gently caressing the boy's slightly brown eyes. He lay quietly on the grass, gazing at the bright moon in the night sky. The silver light seemed to be imprisoned in those deep eyes. No one could understand the world presented in his eyes, and no one could peek into his inner thoughts. The night wind was particularly gentle. After this fierce battle, almost all the new generation of ninjas in Konoha village gathered here. They were located in the inner part of the entire Konoha camp, very close to the logistics and medical forces in the rear. Yuli tilted her head slightly, feeling the familiar breath coming from not far away, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. He reached out and pulled out a slender grass stem from the grass beside him, put it in his mouth and chewed it. The faint aroma of green grass and the sweet taste filled his mouth. I knew you would slip out. A clear voice sounded from behind as the breeze flowed slowly. Yuli's originally agitated aura gradually calmed down, becoming as peaceful and tranquil as before, as if everything that had just happened was just an illusory dream that had never really happened. Under the bright and flawless moonlight, a figure with a golden hedgehog head suddenly broke into this picturesque scenery. His voice, accompanied by the leisurely night breeze, was clearly transmitted to Yuli's ears at this moment. The breeze gently caresses the grass, and the light grass undulates slightly like green waves. Minato also ignored the dew on the grass that wet his clothes, and lay down lightly beside Yule, as if he didn't care whether Yule would respond to him. I don't know if you secretly went to the root to tinker with something, but I always feel that there is a hint of coldness about you. What, are you planning to change your career to become a cool and handsome guy? Lee rolled her eyes in annoyance, not wanting to pay attention to Minato's nonsense, and just spit out a grass stem in her mouth. The grass stem drifted quietly to the ground along with the night wind. Hey, Yule, we all understand what happened that day. It's not your fault. I'm sorry. I know you're sad too. In fact, Minato's apology was unnecessary. There was no fierce conflict between the two sides at that time. It was just that Kushina and Hisahi's sad eyes made Yuli feel uneasy, but Yuli could do nothing about it. All the missions carried out by the root were confidential and could not be disclosed. The reason why he mentioned that was because the friendship in his heart was stirring. However, out of a sense of professional responsibility, he could not say much and could only speak more obscurely, shaking his head. Yuli put his hands under his head. He was no longer willing to think about these useless things. The moonlight tonight is as silver, bright and flawless. It is really beautiful. For a moment, the two of them were speechless, and Minato didn't know what to say. He just instinctively felt that there seemed to be a slight rift between Yuli and them, and he wanted to mend it. Minato, you know, I have grown a lot this year, both in strength and experience. Do you remember your original dream? Of course I remember. I want to be as great as Grandpa Hokage and become the Hokage who protects the villagers. Looking at Minato, who suddenly became excited, Yuli turned his face slightly, and the strand of hair fell down, just covering the slight fluctuations in his eyes. Yuli's eyes were a little confused, as if they had lost focus, but they seemed to contain endless meaning. Minato, in your opinion, what kind of existence should the so-called Hokage be? Yuli's voice was very soft, but it carried a power that could not be ignored. After being asked this question by Yuli, Minato was suddenly stunned, and the figures of successive Hokage began to emerge in his mind. Perhaps, just like the third Hokage, a great leader who loves his people deeply and shoulders the responsibility of guarding the village and maintaining peace. At the same time, he has enough strength to protect everything he cherishes. Minato muttered to himself, and with each word he spoke, the light in his eyes became more and more dazzling, like the bright stars in the night sky. However, Minato did not think for too long, and blurted out these words immediately. Moreover, he became more and more excited as he spoke, as if he was ignited by an invisible force, full of high morale. At this moment, Minato suddenly turned his head to look at Yuli, with a firm and fiery light flashing in his eyes. Facing the passionate Minato in front of him, Yuli just yawned lazily and stared at him silently. In his heart, he couldn't help but think secretly, Minato, is this your answer? Protect? Yes, it is protect. But Minato, what you want to protect is often what the enemy wants to destroy. However, think about it the other way around. Protecting, how can it be so simple and bright? Although Yuli is Danzo's grandson and the young master of the root, Danzo did not show any favoritism to him during this year and let him gain experience at the grassroots level, and tasks that require roots to be performed almost always mean being linked to darkness. Yuli was lying on the grass, her eyes a little dazed. Naruto, he thought silently in his heart. The two of them lay quietly on the ground. After Minato finished his point of view, he watched Yuli close his eyes and stop talking. For a moment, there was silence. Minato scratched his head, put down his hands somewhat disappointedly, and lay on the ground, enjoying this last peaceful moment with Yuli. Because tomorrow, they will go to the battlefield. The next morning, the sun shone on the earth, as if covering the whole world with a layer of golden gauze, but a tense atmosphere filled the air. A thrilling war is about to break out, like a taut bowstring that may break at any time. The Iwagakure and Konoha armies were on high alert, each arranged in neat formations, like two lions facing each other across a river, staring at each other with hostility. Between the two armies, there is a vast Loess Plateau, which is the border area of the Grass Kingdom. Whenever big countries clash, the small countries caught in the middle and trying to survive are always the first to bear the brunt faced with the impending fierce battle. The Grass Kingdom seemed extremely uneasy. They urgently recalled all the ninjas who were on missions and asked them to hide in the village, close the doors and gates, and live in fear for a fear of being affected by the war and becoming innocent victims. At this moment, the battle lines of both sides were very long. From afar, they looked like two huge dragons circling between heaven and earth. For this battle, Orochimaru and his companions did not have a well-thought-out plan. The Konoha side only wanted to defeat the Iwagakure village as quickly as possible and send a clear signal to the entire ninja world that Konoha's dignity is sacred and inviolable. In contrast, the Hidden Rock village did not have so many concerns. The number of ninjas participating in the war was large, more than twice that of Konoha. They only needed to be careful to deal with the opponent's masters, and they would be sure to win. Both sides felt they had a winning chance in a war. Conspiracy is just a foil. The key to victory lies in the disparity in strength. The Iwagakure ninja has a clear advantage in numbers, while Konoha's troops are fewer, but their individual strength far exceeds that of the Iwagakure ninja. This time, both sides seem to have exposed all their forces in an attempt to intimidate the other side in this way, but secretly, both sides had set up an ambush. Iwagakure, the face of the elite Jonin of the Rock Ninja, Jiro Naguchi, was as gloomy as if covered by dark clouds. His eyes filled with hatred were fixed in the direction of Konoha, as if he wanted to burn it to ashes. Behind him, Wang Tu patted Jiro Naguchi's shoulder softly, but his silence was more powerful than any words. Jiro Naguchi, a senior Jonin from the Iwagakure village, dedicated everything he had to the village. His wife and child are both ninjas back then, When their children were still very young, Noguchi Jiro's wife came into conflict with Konoha during a mission in order to bring back important intelligence. She fought desperately with the enemy, and finally died unfortunately. Her teammates chose to live in disgrace and even failed to bring back the intelligence. Why didn't he die? Why did my lover die when I? This thought kept lingering in Jiro Noguchi's mind, causing him great pain, especially when he thought about the fact that his beloved wife had passed away in the battle and he was powerless to do anything. The regret and self-blame almost consumed him. After his wife passed away, Jiro Noguchi once fell into deep depression. But whenever he saw his young son, he would cheer up and hope to accompany his son to grow up healthily. From then on, his son became his only sustenance and hope in life. He had experienced countless wars in his life, and when he was middle-aged, he had a son. Naturally, he had high hopes for him and named him Yingsheng. Yingsheng lived up to his father's expectations and grew up to be a new generation of leading figures in the Iwagakure village. However, fate was unpredictable and cruel, and that seemingly ordinary mission became an indelible pain in his heart. A few months ago, Yingsheng was ordered to go to the land of Fluorine to carry out a mission, but unfortunately he was ambushed by Konoha ninjas. According to the description of the ninja who escaped, 3 out of the 4 members of their team died on the spot, and he was the only one who carried the intelligence and escaped at risk of his life, but he was also seriously injured. After returning, he finally died due to severe injuries and ineffective treatment. Everything was originally so beautiful. Yingsheng had been in love with a woman who satisfied him in every way for a long time, and the two had even reached the stage of discussing marriage. Noguchi himself had already prepared the wedding dress for his son and had even recited his wedding speech many times, but now this series of heavy blows have come one after another. How can Jiro Noguchi bear it? His heart had long been devoured by endless madness, and the sorrow and resentment at this moment were like surging volcanic lava, gushing out continuously, almost completely drowning his only remaining sanity. Driven by this extreme emotion, he resolutely volunteered to participate in this brutal war with only one purpose: to launch bloody revenge on Konoha. He wanted to use the blood of Konoha ninjas to pray for his beloved wife and deceased son. Now, he stood here proudly, gazing at the huge army camp of Konoha in front of him. In his heart, there was only an unshakable belief that he would devote every bit of his strength to make Konoha pay an extremely painful price. Not only did he want to deal a heavy blow to Konoha's military power, but he also wanted to let the shining young generation who represented the hope of the future shed blood on the battlefield. Wang. 2. What do you want us to do? Because of the distance, in Noguchi Jiro's vision, Konoha's garrison camp was just a dark and blurry outline. Jiro Noguchi's face was as cold as ice, and his eyes flashed with a chilling light, as if he could tear people apart at any time. He took a deep breath, trying to maintain the last bit of calmness, but deep in his eyes, there was a kind of lifeless and dead silence. There is no doubt that he is ready to die, and he himself will transform into a big gift from the Iwagakure Blast team to Konoha. Chapter 67 War. In a head-on confrontation, especially in a large-scale battle, those so-called hiding traces, ambushes and other means, are simply ridiculous. In this life-and-death battlefield, only the collision of real swords and guns, only with absolute advantage and powerful strength, plus a little bit of luck, can the final victory or defeat be determined. The howling wind swept in, raising a cloud of dust that flew across the sky like a sharp arrow. Once upon a time, this place was desolate and bleak, with only lonely figures wandering on this yellow land. But now, the fiery and intense vitality seems to be burning, filling every corner. However, after experiencing this extremely brutal war, it will probably take several years for this place to slowly recover. Only when this desolate and lonely yellow earth is nourished and irrigated by the blood shed by countless soldiers can it regain its vitality and grow lush green vegetation. Both the enemy and our side were on high alert. Orochimaru was far away from Huangtu, but sparks seemed to fly when their eyes met. Huangtu is the son of the third Tsuchikage, and Orochimaru is the most favored disciple of the third Hokage in terms of status and prestige. Both of them were capable of taking on the responsibility of being the leaders of their respective armies. At this moment, they no longer needed to say any more nonsense. The first thing that caught the eye was a few extremely large psychic beasts that slowly emerged from the rolling white mist. These behemoths exude a frightening aura just by standing there. For ordinary ninjas, the lethality brought by such a huge summoned beast is absolutely terrifying and difficult to deal with. On the Konoha village side, Gamabunta, Manda and the Slug were the first to appear, while on the Iwagakure village side, they sent out a giant rock ape, a ground snake and a stone bear to fight. With the successive appearance of these powerful spiritual beasts, the entire earth began to tremble violently, as if it would be torn apart by them in the next moment. Boom! There was a loud bang, so deafening that the air around it seemed to become scorching hot. Hiss. 10,000 snakes? Minato boy, I didn't expect you to bring this stinky guy here this time. The Earth Snake and the Iwagakure village team looked at the 10,000 snakes and let out a low roar. Yes, Earth Snake, I'll leave all the snakes to you to deal with. A dull voice came from the Iwagakure village camp. Hiss. Earth Snake? Orochimaru, he is very powerful. I want 200 human sacrifices for this blood sacrifice. The hideous head of the 10,000 snakes turned to Orochimaru, its scarlet tongue constantly swallowing and spitting out. Its tone was cold, and its eyes flashed with greed and bloodthirstiness. See the overwhelming number of rock ninjas on the other side? Just go ahead and do it. Devour as many as you can. He, Orochimaru, stood steadily above the 10,000 snakes' heads. His eyes were as cold and ruthless as ice, fixed tightly on the armies of both sides that were gradually approaching in front of him at this moment. In an instant, all kinds of ninjutsu came one after another. Flames burned, water surged, rocks rolled and roared, thunder and lightning roared, and a thrilling battle was about to break out. There was a cold and ruthless light flashing in the eyes of the 10,000 snakes, a light of extreme desire for blood. It stared at the prey all over the mountains and fields in front of it, as if it couldn't wait to start a killing spree. However, Orochimaru, who was standing on top of the 10,000 snakes, appeared unusually calm, and seemed to not care at all about the scene before him. He has never been a very decent person. As long as he can achieve his goal, everything else doesn't matter. Since the snake is so thirsty for blood and food, let it do what it wants. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly leaped up and easily jumped off the huge head of the 10,000 snakes. Upon seeing this, Watch turned to look at the Earth Snake opposite. With a hint of contempt and disdain in their eyes, it sneered. Earth Snake. Ho ha ho ha, just wait and see how I tear you to pieces. Except for the snakes in Longdi Cave, other wild snakes, little trash. At this moment, a loud earth-shaking noise was heard, and the huge bodies of thousands of snakes swam as fast as lightning, at a speed that was astonishingly fast wherever it passed. It was as if the end of the world had come. The ground shook violently and cracked into a huge bottomless ravine at the same time. Tsunade and Jiraiya also began to communicate with their summoning beasts. The slug is full of disgust for fighting, so Gamabunta has no choice but to take on the arduous task of fighting against a rock giant ape and the stone bear at the same time, while the slug stays aside to assist them in the battle. Jiraiya, you really caused me a lot of trouble, Mom. Bunta, I'm so sorry. Please, please. Jiraiya bowed slightly, clasped his hands together, and his face was full of smiles and sincerity when Tai shook his head helplessly, took a deep puff of the pipe in his mouth, and then quickly drew the dagger from his waist. His eyes instantly became as sharp as an eagle's, and although his body was as big as a mountain, he did not slow down at all due to the change in movement. With a whoosh, he rushed towards the summoned beast of the hidden rock village like an arrow in the land of grass. Forests are pitifully sparse. As far as the eye can see, there is only endless grassland and land that looks somewhat barren due to excessive cultivation. At this moment, a gust of wind roared in from a distant place like a mad dragon. The wind and sand were like a giant yellow dragon, bearing its fangs and claws, rushing towards the earth, covering the sky and the sun in this hazy dust. Waves of sound were like raging waves, piling up in the yellow sand. The shots and charges were like sharp arrows, shooting straight into the sudden sandstorm. Thus, the war entered its first intense stage of close combat. Countless brave and fearless figures leaped into the air like birds and rushed into the flying yellow sand without hesitation. Ninjutsu of various attributes bloomed brilliantly like colorful fireworks, and their power was shocking. In the blink of an eye, waves of miserable cries of death came one after another, like surging waves that kept hitting over, and seemed to never stop under the cruel and ruthless trampling of this large-scale war. Life seems extremely small and fragile, like a candle in the wind, fleeting. The chaotic army is full of crises. At any moment, a cold kunai may suddenly stab you from behind, or you may be instantly engulfed by the extremely terrifying ninjutsu. At this moment, Orochimaru and his gang suddenly rushed into the bloody and cruel meat grinder like messengers of death who reaped lives, leaving Narashikakayo alone with a worried look on his face. As the core figure of the think tank of Konoha village, he needs to dispatch troops from all sides and coordinate the supply of resources from the rear at all times. Of course, he doesn't need to go into battle and kill the enemy himself at such a critical moment. The shadowy snake hand, heavenly feet, earth, escape, yellow spring swamp. As Orochimaru and his men joined the battle, Wang Tu on the other side of the river threw himself into the battlefield without hesitation. He absolutely could not watch Orochimaru and his men slaughter the people in his village so wantonly at this moment. The battle had just started for more than 10 minutes, but more than 100 ninjas had already fallen asleep forever under this yellow earth. Their boiling blood was like a never-ending spring, constantly nourishing this originally barren and dry land. The first round of attack is always so fierce and fierce, like a storm. The purpose is to take the initiative and then pursue the victory to defeat the enemy in one fell swoop. Orochimaru was the first to charge into battle, fighting bravely alongside many powerful elite Jonin. They were agile and quick in movement, and they cooperated with each other tacitly. They were like an indestructible torrent of steel, gathering into an indestructible blade and piercing fiercely into the enemy's tightly defended camp. The opposing Iwagakure troop was not to be outdone and also adopted the same tactic. For a while, the two sides fought fiercely, with red eyes and ears, and neither side was willing to give in on the battlefield. Swords and sabers crisscrossed and shouts of killing resounded through the sky, and all kinds of gorgeous and dazzling ninjutsu emerged one after another. Blazing flames, towering spikes, dazzling lightning, huge and heavy rocks, and raging waves. The entire battlefield seemed like a huge overturned palette, with colorful lights shining against each other, one after another, so beautiful, but also like a meteor across the sky, fleeting, short and dazzling. However, it won't be long before the battle becomes increasingly intense, and the generals and masters of both sides will be attracted to each other like magnets. As the saying goes, soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals, kings against kings. In the end, the situation on the battlefield will guide Orochimaru and other strong men to where they should go. The sky was gloomy, but there was not a drop of rain. Watergate, coming, Babel-like. Lightning, a lightning-fast figure flashed past, bringing up a gust of wind. A rock ninja suddenly stood there motionless as if struck by lightning. In this brief moment, a stream of scarlet blood gushed out from his neck like a fountain, splashing everywhere. Then, the rock ninja fell limply to the ground as if he had lost his support. Namake's Minato was like a ghost assassin wandering on the battlefield. His figure was erratic, freely shuttling around the edge of the battlefield. The cooperation between him and Kushina was seamless, as if they were in sync with each other at the same time. On the Konoha side, they were still hundreds of meters away from the battlefield. Hinata Hisal tightly grasped a bow and arrow in her hand, and the veins on her forehead bulged due to excessive force. Her Byakugan eyes were fully opened, her eyes were as sharp as a hawk, and she kept picking up arrows from her side, steadily placing them on the bowstring, firmly locking onto the Iwagakure ninja on the battlefield. Every arrow shot out is like a death warrant. Even if it is blocked by the enemy, it can still reveal the opponent's flaws. Demolition. Troops, move out. A clear and serious command sounded, echoing in the ears of many members of the demolition team. The voice was dull, as if suppressing something. The Iwagakure Corps Demolition Regiment had been performing outstandingly on the battlefield since the start of this battle, attracting much attention. However, the team did not all go into battle, but instead left a small team of 10 people as a reserve just in case. At this moment, after the new generation of Konoha such as Namake's Minato came to prominence, it was time for them to go out. These 10 members of the demolition team will suddenly move out like dormant cheetahs. Killing a genius is tantamount to cutting off the future of the village. At this time, Okamura Kadon, who was standing in the Iwagakure camp, had a face full of respect and solemnity as the think tank left behind by Huangtu in the Central Army camp. She would not go to the battlefield in person. She would just stand quietly in the camp, watching the members of the blasting team heading to the battlefield. With deep respect in her eyes, the demolition team is an elite team that only ninjas in the Iwagakure village who possess the technique of explosive release are qualified to join. Every member of the demolition team is proud to be a part of it, but explosion releases, after all, a genuine bloodline limit, and those who can master it are extremely rare in the entire Iwagakure village. Therefore, every member of the blast team is a treasure to the Iwagakure village. Likewise, they are also the trump card of the Hidden Rock village. At the critical moment, the captain defended the land, and brought 9 Iwagakure heroes with him, willing to exchange his life for the lives of Konoha's new generation of geniuses. They spared no effort and would die with honor. After all, only death. There have never been any cowards in the demolition team. Chapter 68 Ambush. Another battlefield. Yuli and 4 root ninjas wearing tactical vests were moving quickly in the jungle at this moment. Each of their faces was covered by a carefully made animal mask, making it impossible to see their true appearance. The mask worn by Yuli was of a deep black tone overall, with striking white whirlwind lines dotted on both sides of her face, extending to the slightly raised beak and connecting with each other. Wind Bird. This name not only represents his unique identity, but is also his famous nickname throughout the ninja world. The other 4 companions who fought alongside Yuli wore different styles of masks, including pighead masks, black civet cat masks, and black and white dog masks. This elite team is led by Yuli himself and is tasked with a crucial mission, to cut off the rear military supply line of the Hidden Rock Village. In this fierce battle, the army sent by Iwagakure was huge, with more than twice the number of people than Konoha village. Because of this, their demand for various materials and supplies was far greater than that of Konoha, and the amount of resources required was huge. Of course, this operation could not be completed by Yuli and his teammates alone at the same time. The daily military supply of thousands of people is by no means a burden that a small team can fully bear through a single route. Likewise, Orochimaru would not completely entrust such an important task to his own disciple. Yuli still needed experience, and he was just a member of the route team that came out to carry out the mission. If an accident occurs, it will undoubtedly be a disaster for the troops on the front line. The main task of Yuli and his companions is to continue harassment, force the enemy to increase troops to consolidate the route, and destroy the supplies if conditions permit. Compared to conventional wars between countries, confrontations between ninjas are more special. It is common to penetrate deep into the enemy camp and carry out destruction at the cost of one's life. In such a tense situation, how to ensure the safety of one's own logistics supply has become the top priority that every ninja village must consider carefully. Along the way, no one spoke. The route members were very different from ordinary ninjas. In their hearts, the mission was always the first priority, and the training they received was far beyond that of ordinary ninjas. The most important ones are loyalty and obedience to the village, as well as the firm determination to complete the mission. As a result, the village's logistical supplies are often not transported too much at one time, but are divided into multiple batches to provide supplies to the front line in a relatively abundant and sufficient state. At this time, Yuli and his companions were running towards the rear of the Iwagakure village from both sides until they reached the designated location. Today, they have intercepted several waves of small supply teams. Near dusk, news came from the routes that a new piece of intelligence had been discovered. This was a supply team that was much larger than other small supply lines. According to intelligence, this route is a relatively large supplier route for the Hidden Rock Village. It will be escorted by 2 elite teams led by Jonin. Our mission this time is to harass this team and look for opportunities to destroy their supplies. Do you understand? Yes, received. To you. Lee carefully folded the map and put it in her arms, then raised her head and glanced at the 4 people around her. They all wore masks that covered their faces. Including Yuli himself, the true identities of the 5 people were hidden beneath the masks. Among them, the ones wearing black and white puppy masks are a pair of twin sisters. Behind the pig face mask is the man with a deep voice and a burly figure, who is also the largest among these people, and the last one, the man wearing a civet cat mask, has eyes as dark as a deep black pool. The trees here are dense and luxuriant. Looking from a distance, all you can see are towering trees with luxuriant branches and leaves, giving people a feeling of blocking out the sky. It is undoubtedly a perfect place to hide. Under Yuli's guidance, the 5 people cleverly set up a large number of traps in a short period of time. However, Yuli didn't seem to care much about whether these traps could work. Before each supply team set out, a group of vanguards would be sent to explore the way. Zuanmeo, after the supply team enters the trap area, you will be the first to move and be responsible for diverting the attention of the guards. Yuli whispered instructions to the companion wearing a black civet cat mask. Old pig. As soon as a member of the guard is attracted by the black cat, you will immediately summon the red pig and cooperate with the black dog and the white dog to focus on attacking the opponent's supply. Okay, Windbird. Yes, 2. After briefly discussing the response strategy with their teammates, they quickly dispersed and each found a secluded location to hide. They held their breath, silently observing every move in the woods, and quietly waiting for the expected prey to appear. Time passed quietly, the sky gradually became darker, the sun slowly set in the west, and the outline of the mountains was looming in the afterglow. A bright moon quietly climbed up the branches, casting a cool light. The first to enter Yuli and the others' field of vision were 2 young ninjas from the Hidden Rock Village. They ran all the way, stopping every few steps to carefully examine the surroundings. Yuli lurked calmly and did not trigger the trap immediately. Because the number of traps set was limited, or perhaps everything was under Yuli's control, The two advanced scouts did not notice any abnormalities and passed through the area smoothly. Then they left a mark on the tree to indicate that the road ahead was clear, and then continued forward without hesitation. Yuli continued to remain silent and waited patiently. Finally, after more than 10 minutes, the long-awaited target, a team dressed in rock ninja costumes, appeared before his eyes. This team had 2 carriages, on which were bags of food and supplies. As for the more valuable items, they were placed in the space scroll that was escorting the Jonin. The sealed ninja is the treasure of every village. Similarly, the space scroll is also a strategic material of each village. Even Konoha does not allow the casual use of the space scroll. Therefore, only some extremely valuable strategic materials are loaded using space scrolls, while other large and conventional materials such as food are transported using horse-drawn carriages. The transport team carefully shuttled through the dense jungle, moving slowly and cautiously. The captain in charge of the escort mission this time was a 30-year-old Jonin, Yakuji Ryu. Although he had sent pioneers to explore the road conditions in advance, he still remained highly alert and did not dare to relax at all. Yakuji Ryu was tall and mighty, with strong muscles that seemed to burst through the tight uniform he was wearing. His head was bald as a mirror, without any hair covering it. There was a hideous scar on his cheek that almost extended to the lower right corner of his eye. In addition to Yakuji Ryu, this escort also includes ninjas from 3 teams. 2 of the ninjas acted as the vanguard, leading the team by about 2 kilometers. The remaining 9 ninjas guarded the carriages, squinting their eyes slightly and occasionally glancing at the burly woman sitting in the carriage at the back. The woman looked tired and seemed to have no interest in anything around her, revealing a deep sense of fatigue. Yuli's expression froze, and he felt a hint of threat from that woman, a feeling even stronger than that from the middle-aged man in front of him. He secretly narrowed his eyes, looking for the best opportunity, and then triggered the numerous traps that had been set without hesitation. Rumbling, boom, shhhhhh. Suddenly, there was a deafening explosion, and then dozens of shuriken flashing with cold light rushed towards the team like raindrops. Enemy! Attack! A scream cut through the sky. I saw a figure as nimble as a civet cat suddenly rushing out from the bushes on the left, holding an extremely sharp short blade in his hand, aiming directly at a rock ninja tuning at the edge of the team. There seemed to be a layer of breeze surrounding her body, making her as fast as lightning, and she arrived next to the ninja in the blink of an eye. The sword flashed, and in an instant, the rock ninja's throat was pierced by the cold sword tip. Before he could even react, blood gushed out like a fountain, dyeing the sword red, and the man holding the sword drew back the sword mercilessly, swung it along the way, causing a string of blood to splash, and then quickly disappeared from the spot. Damn it! The Iwagakure side was immediately plunged into shock and anger, and Yakuji Ryu was even more shocked and angry, and he immediately organized his men, Psychic, Red Pig, following. The shout behind him, a giant wild boar that was 3 meters tall, red all over, and covered with sharp fangs appeared out of nowhere and ran forward aggressively. Black, white. The black dog and the white dog looked at each other, and understood each other. Without hesitation, they rushed towards the rock ninjas on both sides and started a fierce battle with the enemy. For a moment, the sounds of shouting, killing and swords clashing resounded through the sky. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 Hadabayashi Benri. Except for Yuli, the other team members showed their strong strength, bravely moved forward, and fought a desperate battle with the rock ninja. The atmosphere on the battlefield was extremely tense, as if every moment could determine life and death. What? A damned fellow, Ling, Dakin, guard the carriage well, and the rest of you, follow me to kill the enemies. Yes, the sharp and piercing whistling sounds were deafening, as if they were going to tear the entire night sky apart. I saw Tsunade with detonating talismans tightly attached to them flying as fast as meteors, aiming directly at the carriage not far ahead. Shhhhh. Then another series of shuriken shot out like a storm, accurately colliding with the Tsunade with detonating tags. In an instant, one could hear the crisp sound of branches breaking all around, countless pieces of gravel flying in the sky, flames splashing, and the shock wave generated by the explosion overturned everything nearby to the ground, and the scene suddenly fell into chaos. Bang bang bang. The endless sound of explosions came one after another, resounding through the sky. At this moment, Laozu was working closely with a black dog and the white dog to fight against many ninjas from Iwagakure. They were agile, Their moves were fierce, and they cooperated with each other tacitly, making it difficult for the opponent to resist for a while. On the other side, Black Cat was holding an extremely sharp sword in his hand, moving through the enemy camp like a ghost. Her movements were as fast as lightning, dazzling the eyes, and it was impossible to grasp her exact position. Every swing of the sword was filled with murderous intent, which could injure people at the least and kill them at the worst. Yakichi turned around and whispered something to the woman sitting in the carriage, then resolutely swung the huge and heavy black iron hammer in his hand. There was a loud bang, and the giant hammer was thrown out like a cannonball. With a rumbling sound, this unstoppable blow went straight towards the Black Cat. Boom! Black Cat suddenly noticed a deafening roar coming from behind her. She pounced forward without hesitation and quickly turned around to look. When she saw the scene in front of her, a chill surged from the bottom of her heart, making her break out in a cold sweat. When the huge hammer fell to the ground, it actually broke several thick trees, along with a loud noise and roar of falling tree trunks. A large area of dazzling red sunlight penetrated the dense leaves and sprinkled into the originally dark and damp forest. The frightened birds flapped their wings and flew away in panic, and Yakichi Ryu's figure disappeared out of thin air like a ghost. But then he slowly bent down, tightly grasping the huge hammer that was deeply embedded in the soil. His eyes were cold as ice, staring at the Black Cat in the distance. Haha, in that case, let me play with you. What? A big trouble. At the same time, a woman with a sturdy figure and a capable look was sitting cross-legged on a sack of grain on the carriage. Although her companion was under attack at the moment, she seemed extremely calm and not panicked at all. She just waved her hand and several extremely sharp shurikens shot out, accurately hitting the rapidly approaching explosive Tsunade in an instant. There were loud bangs and a series of earth-shaking explosions suddenly sounded. It's finally here. Hatabashi. Banri, who was sitting in the carriage board, muttered to himself and frowned, seeming a little annoyed. Although she never liked to cause trouble, what could she do? After all, the other party was her captain. Shaking her head helplessly, Hatabashi Banri moved her wrist. Then, when she looked up again, her originally lazy eyes suddenly became extremely sharp. Her figure flashed and disappeared from the spot in an instant. The next moment, a sharp kick whizzed by and accurately hit the abdomen of the black dog that was hovering in the air and trying to kill the rock ninja, who unfortunately fell to the ground with a dull bang sound. The black dog was kicked away fiercely, spitting blood from the mouth and with a look of shock in his eyes. Black dog. The white dog, who was fighting against other rock ninjas, suddenly screamed, and in a trance she was almost hit by a sword from the rock ninja in front of her. Hatabayashi Banri landed lightly on the ground, reached out and gently stroked the huge and heavy water-splitting demon head sword in his hand. The handle of this sword is as tall as a human, and there are several bright red rings inlaid on the back of the sword, which looks extremely disproportionate to the petite figure of Hatabayashi Banri. However, in her hands, the giant blade seemed to have lost its weight and was wielded with great force and ease. After another teleportation, Banri Hatabayashi disappeared from people's sight again. There was a loud bang and Laozu was so scared that he wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and looked fearfully at the place where Hatabayashi Banri was just now. There suddenly appeared a deep pit there, which was obviously caused by her full strength attack just now. It's really terrible. Finno, please come quickly. While praying secretly, Laozu looked around nervously, fearing that the terrible woman would suddenly appear beside him. The battle became more and more intense, and the whole battlefield was filled with the smell of gunpowder and blood, which made people terrified at this time. Zuanmeo also led Hengdiliu away. Yakichi Ryu is not unaware of Black Cat's tricks, but he doesn't care. Hatabashi Banri is also in the team, and he has enough trust in her. After all, it was he who brought up the child who surpassed him. Between the tree trunks with lush branches and leaves, Yuli's muscles were tense, his breathing was light and steady, and the tang sword was quietly unsheathed, the sharp blade flashing a cold light. He narrowed his eyes slightly, his gaze as sharp as an eagle's, fixed firmly on the front, like a cheetah ready to pounce, patiently waiting for the perfect opportunity to attack. Suddenly, a low grunting sound was heard, accompanied by the sound of flowing water, as if nature was also cheering for the upcoming fierce battle. I saw a trickle of water flowing down the branches and gently wrapping around the blade of the tang sword in an instant. A dazzling flash of lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the entire space, while also stimulating every cell in Yuli's body, causing his strength and speed to instantly explode to the extreme. At this moment, Yuli was like a dazzling star in the daytime. Swooping towards Hatabayashi Banri at an astonishing speed, his figure was as elusive as a ghost. Thousands of birds were singing, and their high-pitched and sharp cries resounded through the sky. The cold light was shining everywhere, and the Tang sword was waving in a dazzling and brilliant sword light and shadow wherever Yuli passed. Strong winds whistled up, and the bushes behind him seemed to be hit by an invisible hammer, and a huge hole exploded. He passed through as quickly as a flash of lightning, leaving only a faint afterimage, and the place where he had originally stood was already empty. Hatabayashi Benri, who had originally intended to quickly eliminate the enemy, suddenly felt an extremely dangerous aura coming from the side. However, she did not panic at all, but instead seemed unusually calm. Hatabayashi Benri was seen holding the water-splitting ghost head knife in his hand. He shook his wrist and slashed to the left with a swish sound. His movements were smooth and seamless. Clang! The crisp and harsh sound of metal collision resounded throughout the forest, and sparks flew everywhere, like gorgeous fireworks blooming in the night sky. The two weapons intertwined in the fierce collision, bursting out countless dazzling rays of light. Yuli personally felt the extraordinary power of Hatabayashi Benri, and a feeling of surprise surged in his heart. What? A powerful force, Yuli was muttering something softly, but his face showed no fear at all, and it could even be said that he was full of anticipation and excitement with each fierce battle with Hatabayashi Benri. Yuli's fighting spirit in his heart became stronger and stronger, as if a raging fire was burning. Suddenly, he took a few steps back, his eyes flashing with fanaticism, and the chakra in his body surged like a surging torrent. However, even so, Yuli still kept in mind the primary goal of this action. Set fire, old pig, he hissed. Got it. A deep and powerful voice came from behind. It was Old Pig, who was working closely with a black and white duo who responded at the same time. Hatabayashi Benri on the opposite side also turned around and ordered another person, Ling, fire the flare. At this moment, Hatabayashi Benri could not help but feel an indescribable sense of uneasiness. She had originally seemed nonchalant about this battle, but now she could no longer maintain that relaxed and casual attitude. After all, Yakuji Ryu's original intention of bringing her here was to ensure the safe transportation of materials. If something went wrong at this moment, the consequences would be unimaginable. So, Hatabayashi Benri shouted to her companions without hesitation to fire flares to request reinforcements from the front line. She did not dare to be negligent when she thought that she would be scolded if she lost these important supplies. Call out! Exclamation mark! Bang bang bang! Stop him! White, black. The eyes of the black dog and the white dog suddenly became sharp, like two lightning bolts streaking across the night sky. After they looked at each other tacitly, they instantly got rid of their respective opponents and quickly moved together at the same time. The powerful chakras in the body echo and blend with each other. Ninjutsu. Moonlight, ninjutsu. Starlight, as two low shots were heard, a dazzling light suddenly burst out. The brilliant sword light danced like a meteor, with endless power, rushing towards the rock ninja who was about to take out a flare in an instant. The entire jungle was shrouded in brilliant light, which was dazzling on the other side. Lao Tzu also faithfully carried out the instructions given by Yuli. He shouted softly, "Red Pig!" The huge red wild boar immediately responded to its master with a heavy grunt. Then, the old pig quickly formed seals with his hands, and a hot breath gushed out of his body. Fire. Style, giant fireball. As the old pig finished speaking, the red pig opened his mouth, and a ball of blazing red flame came out of his mouth. Lao Tzu formed a seal again and integrated his own power into it. When the two combined with each other, there was a loud bang, and a giant red fireball with a diameter of 3 meters rose into the sky, like a red sun descending to the earth, illuminating the entire jungle. This huge fireball flew towards the transport vehicle at an astonishing speed. Trees fell down one after another along the way, and heat waves rolled, forming an unstoppable fire dragon. No one dared to face such a terrifying attack. Chapter 70. Fierce fighting between the two sides. In an instant, a raging fire swept over and quickly spread to the surrounding trees. The fire was extremely fierce, as if it was going to devour the entire world. Earth. Escape. Earth formation wall. With a low roar, a huge earth wall rose from the ground, but it was ultimately unable to withstand the old pig's extremely hot giant fireball. There was a loud bang, and the half of the carriage near the front was instantly blown to pieces. The already frightened horses on the carriage were even more terrified at this moment. They struggled desperately to break free from their restraints, and finally succeeded in breaking the reins and galloping towards the depths of the dense forest. However, at this moment, a dazzling firework soared into the sky, cutting through the night sky, and made a sharp and piercing whistling sound. It turned out to be a signal flare fired by the rock ninja, Alice. There's really nothing I can do. Looking at the flares circling and screaming in the sky, Yuli sighed helplessly. However, as long as all the supplies can be completely destroyed before the ninjas from the front arrive to provide support, this operation will not be a complete failure. It's easier said than done. After all, what's really important is not the 2 carriages full of food, but the space scrolls carried by these ninjas. Lightning. Release. Instant slash. The lightning chakra surging in the body flowed rapidly like a raging torrent, as if lightning flashed through the meridians. This powerful and violent energy constantly washed and stimulated every cell in the body, stimulating their potential vitality and vigor. The shadowy snake hand. Spiritual. Technique. Basher. Along with a low shout, a powerful aura suddenly burst out in the blink of an eye. A giant python with a body as thick as 2 meters and more than 10 meters long suddenly appeared on the spot. It raised its head to the sky, let out a deafening roar, and its ferocious eyes flashed with a desire for blood. At this moment, there was a thunderous roar that shook the earth, like thunder rolling in. As soon as the python appeared, before it could show its true strength, several powerful explosions fell on its huge body like raindrops. Hiss! The attacked python twisted its body in pain. Its hard scales were blown to pieces, blood and flesh splattered everywhere, scattered in the dust. This sudden attack made it so painful that it couldn't help but let out a shrill scream. Bash, go and support Leozu and the others. Hiss! Despite being seriously injured, the python still faithfully carried out the psychic's instructions. It endured the pain and widened its cold vertical pupils, revealing endless killing intent and bloodthirsty desire. Then, without hesitation, it opened its bloody mouth and rushed towards Laozu and others who were engaged in a melee not far away at an astonishing speed. Damn humans! I will tear you to pieces bite by bite. Yuli's eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. He flashed and rushed forward like a gust of wind. His figure flashed with lightning, dazzling people. The knife skills in his hand were even more exquisite. Every knife was like lightning across the sky, so fast that it was astonishing in comparison. Hatabashi Banri standing in front of him seemed much more stable. Every step Hatabashi Banri takes is as steady as a rock, full of the power to destroy everything. He wields a giant blade weighing thousands of pounds, and his moves are wide and powerful, with majestic momentum. Although Yuli's physique is now much better than before, the direction of his training is not to pursue the ultimate strength. So in this fierce battle, facing a strong and powerful opponent, Yuli is temporarily at a disadvantage. Hatabayashi Banri held a heavy weapon that was extremely disproportionate to his body size, and waved it like a violent storm, smashing towards Yuli with unusual ferocity. For a moment, dust was flying all around and the atmosphere was extremely tense at this moment. The only figures left on the empty ground around them were the 2 of them fighting desperately above his head. The blue-purple night sky spread out, illuminating this bare land like a dream. Yuli's figure was as erratic as a ghost. He shuttled back and forth on the battlefield, dodging left and right, and cleverly avoiding the opponent's attacks. The tang sword in his hand turned into dazzling lightning, cutting through the void, and chopped down towards Hatabayashi Banri with unparalleled power. As the knife flashed, faint cold light could be seen radiating out, like sharp lightning, cutting through the void, with unparalleled power, as if to tear the entire space apart, accompanied by an angry shout. Wind style, wind tornado. Suddenly, gusts of strong winds rose up, forming a huge tornado, like a ferocious beast, opening its bloody mouth and rushing towards Hatabayashi Banri with a whirring sound wherever the tornado passed. It raised clouds of dust that covered the sky and the sun. Hatabayashi only had just managed to resist Yuli's fierce attack and was now out of breath. Facing such a powerful tornado, she knew she couldn't resist it head-on. She made a prompt decision and dropped the extremely sharp water-splitting sword in her hand to the ground with a swish, deeply inserted into the soil, and chose to use the weight of the sword to offset the attack. However, Hatabayashi Banri was not someone who would sit back and wait for death. Just as the tornado was about to strike, she whispered, "Earth escape, earth flowing river." In an instant, the ground shook violently, and a large earth flow river more than 10 meters wide rose into the air like a giant dragon, rushing towards Yuli with an overwhelming force. This earth flow river is majestic and powerful, swallowing up and submerging everything wherever it goes. Seeing this, Yuli did not dare to be negligent in the slightest. Water escape, water formation wall. A huge transparent water wall appeared in front of Yuli and quickly began to rotate at high speed. This seemingly thin and fragile water wall actually contained extremely strong defense and toughness. In the blink of an eye, the earthflow river slammed heavily into the water array wall. The 2 collided, making a loud noise that shook the earth. The surging rock and soil torrent pressed against the water wall like a mountain, But surprisingly, the imagined shattering of the water wall did not occur. The water array wall, which was only a few centimeters thick, dented slightly after being hit hard, but did not break then. This seemingly fragile water wall began to spin at an alarming speed. It seemed to have turned into an enormous vortex, continuously swallowing up the surging impact of the Tule River. Every impact was cleverly resolved by the water array wall, transforming it into a more powerful force of its own, which then spread out in all directions like ripples. Yuli looked back anxiously, only to see his 3 teammates struggling to confront 5 powerful rock ninjas. Although they tried their best, they were gradually showing signs of fatigue, and it was obvious that they could not hold on any longer. Wind. Bird. Destroy those supplies, Lao. Zhu's voice was dull, and he already had many wounds on his body. Chapter 71 Destroying Supplies. Following Lao Zhu's call, Yuli quickly created a clone. The original body entangled with Hadabayashi Wanli, and the clone rushed towards the only remaining supply vehicle like a ghost. Fire. Release. Phoenix Immortal Fire Technique. In an instant, more than a dozen blazing fireballs rushed towards the target like raindrops. However, at this moment, Rock Ninja Wenling's face turned extremely ugly. He knew very well the importance of these supplies to the battle situation and must not let the other side get them easily. He used ninjutsu without hesitation, and instantly, layer after layer of hard rocks tightly wrapped around his body. Then, like an angry bull, he swung his arms fiercely at the fireballs that were already within reach, trying to stop them from moving forward. We must stop him, Weno. Link prayed silently and his heart boomed, rumbling. Oh, gotta block it. Under the flames, Shangaling was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot and was engulfed by the blazing flames. Then, the raging flames burned all the carriages. Wind. Bird. Mission accomplished. Looking back, I saw the black cat who was responsible for leading away another Iwagakure Junin, Yakuji Ryu, now staggering back from not far away. Blood was constantly oozing out of her abdomen, which was only crudely bound with a cloth strip. The mask on her face was also tattered and half hanging on her face. There was a faint knife scar at the corner of her eye, which was faintly visible. Her clothes were tattered, covered with dirt, burn marks, blood stains, and many scars from sharp blades. Zhuan Mao was breathing rapidly at this time. She was seriously injured, but she still managed to come back here. Prior to this, Yuli had ordered Black Cat to lure away the leader of the Rock Ninja team. However, surprisingly, Black Cat not only successfully completed the task, but even exceeded expectations and was able to kill the enemy directly. Did you get the things from him? Considering that Yakuji Ryu is the captain, he must be carrying a space scroll that stores important supplies. In this way, the operation is almost complete. In this case, Yuli felt relieved, then raised his head and cast his eyes on the last target, Hatabayashi Benri. Yakuji Ryu, Hatabashi. Benri was slightly startled when his thoughts were interrupted by the Black Cat's voice, and then he slowly turned his head. All I saw was the masked woman returning alone, but I couldn't see the familiar figure, the man who always smiles naively and likes to stroke his big bald head, the man who always carries a huge hammer beside him and never leaves his side, the old man who always stands up without hesitation and protects him whenever something happens. I don't know since when. The man who was once as majestic as a mountain no longer seems as tall and straight as before. Those broad and solid shoulders seem to gradually become thin and frail, no longer able to hold up the sky, and could no longer protect them. When did I grow to a level that surpassed him and possessed even greater power? Past scenes flashed through his mind, and a hint of sadness flashed through Hatabayashi Banri's eyes. You are such a wimp, she whispered softly. Her tone seemed calm and nonchalant, but her eyes were increasingly filled with danger, and her aura suddenly rose steadily, becoming even more fierce than before. A violent and ferocious aura gushed out like a volcanic eruption, and the muscles all over his body twisted and squirmed violently. The next moment, he was like a tiger rushing down the mountain, rushing towards the direction where the Black Cat was. At this moment, she only had Zhuan Mao in her eyes. It was this man who had to be killed. I will avenge you, old man. You. Li naturally couldn't let the other party get what he wanted. He saw a flash of light like lightning, and his figure disappeared from the spot in an instant. Then, there was a loud bang, and the two figures collided with each other again. In an instant, the flashes of swords and sabers crisscrossed, and lightning and earth and rocks exploded. Get out of my way, little devil. At this moment, Hatabayashi Banri's face suddenly turned pale, and a trace of blood even flowed from the corner of her mouth. Although she said nonchalant words, the strong murderous intent in her eyes that could not be concealed was revealed. She doesn't care about other people, except Ryu Yakuji, the old man who has been her team leader since she graduated from the ninja school. As the two men collided fiercely again and again, the speed became faster and the frequency became higher, and Hotabashi Banri gradually began to lose his composure. However, for Yuli, the enemy's anger happened to be one of the key factors for his victory. Seeing that Hatabayashi Wanli was in such a situation, Yuli quickly adjusted his tactics, and the thunder power around him suddenly increased several times. He suddenly appeared behind Hatabayashi Wanli like a dazzling lightning. The tang sword in his hand flipped slightly, and in an instant, a bright silver light suddenly lit up, with unparalleled momentum, slashing straight down towards her back. Little devil! Don't underestimate me, Hatabayashi. Banri ignored Yuli's attack. The corners of her mouth slightly raised, revealing a crazy and slightly bloodshot smile, as if she wanted to devour everything in the world at this moment. Her originally white teeth had all been dyed red by blood. Secret technique, Earth Dragon Strangling. With a roar, a huge dragon head covered with hard scales suddenly broke out of the ground. A giant dragon bared its fangs and claws. Its face was ferocious, and its eyes were flashing with endless anger and murderous intent. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed Yuli and Hatabayashi Wanli in one gulp without hesitation, and then quickly twisted its body, stirring up waves of violent earth and stone fragments, and sank straight into the ground like a meteorite falling to the earth. Windbird, damn it! Not far away, Laozu and a few others witnessed what was happening before their eyes, and they were immediately furious, with looks of disbelief on their faces. Black Cat, who was busy bandaging her wounds to stop the bleeding at the edge of the battlefield, was also shocked for a moment. She barely supported her extremely weak body and stood up, leaning with difficulty on the bloody and broken tree trunk beside her because she was too excited. Zhuan Mao's body began to tremble violently involuntarily, and every movement made her already pale face become even paler at the same time. The wound that had stopped bleeding opened again due to the shaking of her body, and the scarlet warm blood dripped onto the ground along the corners of her clothes. Tick, tick, tick. Wind bird, your mission is not yet complete. Ha, blue. Slash, style 1, boom, slam. La. There was a loud noise like the collapse of heaven and earth, and the ground suddenly shook violently. The sound of breaking rocks and rushing water intertwined into a terrifying symphony. Immediately afterwards, another deafening roar sounded, and the entire ground seemed to be torn apart and exploded in an instant. Chapter 72, Killing Banri Hotayashi. Yuli suddenly jumped up from the ground like an arrow, but in just a few short breaths, his body was covered with countless hideous scars, and his originally neat clothes became tattered. After rushing out of the underground, Yuli stayed in the air for a moment due to the recoil, but at this moment, the members of the exploration team who had just returned from the front just returned to the battlefield. Earth. Escape. Rock spear. As soon as the words fell, several huge rock spears shot towards Yuli like raindrops. Faced with this sudden attack, Yuli was caught off guard for a moment. HMPH. After a crisp sound, the extremely hard rock shattered instantly, and the black cat fell heavily to the ground. Although she held the broken blade tightly in her hand and struggled to smash the rock spears that stabbed Yuli one by one, the flying sharp rocks still pierced her body mercilessly. However, Black Cat seemed to completely ignore his own pain, and rushed towards Yuli recklessly, using his delicate body to block the fatal blow for him. Black Cat, you. Lee's face was gloomy. He was really careless, but Black Cat, damn it. Yuli gritted his teeth and secretly cursed himself for taking his opponent too lightly. He actually underestimated the strength of Hatabayashi Banri, who was in an extremely furious state at the moment, and suffered a great loss in this contest. At this time, Yuli looked at the ground with some vigilance. The woman was still lurking underground and had not shown up. Black Cat, don't move there, I will treat you later. Complete the task first. Zhuan Mao nodded softly, asking Yuli not to be distracted. He raised his head and looked around. At this time, Red Pig and Basher had been forced to return to their spiritual world due to serious injuries. Black Dog, White Dog and Old Pig were also covered in wounds. They were relying on each other and barely resisting the enemies around them. The bodies of 4 Iwagakure ninjas were already lying on the ground, but they had already consumed too much energy and chakra, and were almost reaching their limits, otherwise they would not have let the others go at this time. Huh? I don't know if it's enough to use this move now, you. Lee muttered to himself as he looked at his teammates who were struggling to the limit. Blue. Slash. Second style. The Lightning attribute chakra and water attribute chakra wrapped around Yuli's body like two giant dragons, roaring and rolling at the same time. The powerful vitality that was originally repairing the wounds on his body seemed to be ignited, burning fiercely, and turned into a torrent of chakra, which continuously gathered towards the Tang sword held tightly in Yuli's hand. Under the infusion of such a vast chakra, the Tang sword began to tremble slightly, as if it would break at any time because it could not withstand such a huge force. However, Yuli's eyes were firm and there was no fear in them. Little devil, with a roar of anger, secret technique, rock armor, Hatabayashi. Banri suddenly emerged from the earth, but now she has transformed into a 3-meter-tall rock giant. The entire body was covered with a thick layer of rock, like an indestructible fortress. The huge rock fist came with a sharp sound of breaking the wind, and with the force of overwhelming the mountains and seas, it fiercely bombarded Yuli. This attack was so powerful that Yuli's pupils suddenly dilated. This was the move. He clearly remembered that when he was in the land of birds, the senior ninja from the hidden rock village had used the same secret technique. Facing such a strong enemy, Yuli regained his composure. He held the Tang sword tightly in his hand, and the blade was stable without any shaking. Success or failure depends on this one move. Let this move decide the outcome. Boom, bang bang slam la. In an instant, thunder roared and lightning flashed, as if tearing the entire world apart, accompanied by loud noises. Rocks as hard as steel were blown everywhere and fell to the ground like rain of gravel. What was unexpected was that at this thrilling moment, the Tang sword that Yuli was holding tightly in his hand suddenly broke at the waist of the blade without any warning. Only half of the broken hilt was left, held alone in her hand. Then, a series of crisp sounds rang out: click clank, clank, puff. As the smoke gradually dissipated, Yuli's right arm appeared in an extremely strange and twisted state. He tightly grasped the remaining half of the sword in both hands, and with all his strength, stabbed it fiercely into Hatabayashi Banri's chest. The originally solid rock formations were now broken into pieces, and the Tang sword that had accompanied Yuli in countless battles was also broken into two pieces. What happened before my eyes was jaw-dropping. This senior ninja from the Iwagakure, who is also the strongest fighter in the escort team, Banri Hotabashi, was killed tragically at the hands of Yuli. In fact, the areas in which Banri Hatabayashi and Kirabi excel are very different in comparison. Hotabayashi Banri's physical fitness is not much different from Killer B, and his understanding of earth escape techniques is extraordinary, far surpassing that of ordinary ninjas. Because of this, even though she did not have a huge amount of chakra as a backing like Kirabi, Yuli's victory was extremely difficult. Yuli let out a long breath, endured the severe pain all over his body, and stood up with difficulty. He gritted his teeth, walked step by step to the body of Hatabayashi Banri, and used the space scroll to collect his remains. After all, a top ninja like Hatabayashi Banri is undoubtedly of great research value to Konoha. Yuli looked around and saw that the surroundings were full of broken trees due to the fierce battle between the two, with broken branches and leaves scattered everywhere. In addition, there were many thick tree roots that were strangled by Hatabayashi Banri's earth dragon. His heartbeat became violent again, and in an instant, an inexplicable twitching feeling surged into his heart. Yuli took a deep breath, tried to calm himself down, and then quickly took out a syringe emitting a faint red light from his bag. The syringe seemed to contain a mysterious power. Yuli opened it without hesitation. Then, he skillfully rolled up his sleeves and gently pushed the syringe, allowing the bright red liquid to slowly inject into his body. This is the latest achievement of Root Research and Development, the powerful accelerator version 1.0. It has a super strong catalytic effect, which can accelerate Yuli's wound repair. At the same time, it contains extremely strong life activity and has a significant effect on Yuli. However, its side effects are also very strong. With Yuli's current physical strength, it can only be used once within 3 days. As the drug gradually took effect, Yuli could clearly feel that his injuries were beginning to heal. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and carefully put away the syringe. This precious item had to be properly handled and would be destroyed later. After cleaning up, Yuli turned back to the battlefield to support other teammates. After all, the battle is not over yet. Chapter 73 Mission completed. On the border of the Grass Kingdom, close to the Fire Kingdom, there is an extremely hidden cave. The entrance of the cave has been blocked firmly by Laozu with rocks and carefully camouflaged so that it is not easily noticed. At this moment, Yuli's teammates were hiding in the cave, taking the time to rest and adjust. This mission was not easy to complete, and strictly speaking it was a mission where the losses outweighed the gains. Yuli, the captain, had a broken right arm and the Tang sword she was using was also broken, leaving only a broken blade. Zhuan Mao next to her was even more seriously injured, with severe damage to her abdomen, and her injuries were extremely serious. In comparison, Yuli had amazing recovery ability, but Black Cat was far less powerful than her. At the same time, because of the presence of the accelerator, Yuli's heart was like a tireless motor, madly squeezing out every bit of vitality in her body. The endless vitality surged out like a tide, and combined with the exquisite healing ninjutsu performed by Yuli, her and his bodies were repaired extremely quickly. Not long after, Yuli's originally scarred body miraculously recovered as if those hideous wounds had never appeared. However, Yuli's face at this moment was obviously much paler than before, and it was obvious that the treatment just now had taken a huge toll on him. No one can accurately determine whether every mission will go wrong. All one can say is that they are dancing between life and death. Except for Black Cat, the injuries of the other team members were not too serious. They were mainly exhausted after a long and intense battle, which almost exhausted all the chakra in their bodies. Fortunately, Yuli was there, and under his treatment, everyone's injuries gradually improved. Although they have not yet fully recovered, it no longer has much impact on their fighting strength. This is also the important reason why Tsunade strongly advocates and develops the medical ninja system. When a team has an excellent medical ninja, the survival chance of the entire team will increase exponentially. But even so, medical ninjas are not omnipotent on the battlefield. With a solemn expression, Yuli looked at Zhuan Mao with a headache, feeling the depletion of chakra in his body. Yuli slumped weakly beside him and quickly stuffed the nutrient solution into his mouth. For a moment, Yuli didn't care about the unpalatable taste afterwards. He diluted another one with water and distributed it to the other 4 people. Lao Zhu had the best physique and ate half of it, and the other 3 took the remaining half. It's not that Yuli is reluctant to give it up, but this nutrient solution is difficult for their bodies to absorb. However, no matter how difficult it is to absorb, it is much better than the Binglian pills. Zhuan Mao is the one whose strength is second only to Yule in the team. His responsibility in this mission is second only to Yule. He faces the elite Jonin of Rock Ninja alone and even counterattacks and seizes the space scroll from him. It has to be said that this was beyond Yuli's expectations, but the price Zhuan Mao paid was also extremely high. It can even be said that if it were not for Yuli's existence, even if Zhuan Mao completed the task, the final outcome he would face would only be death. Watching the Black Cat calmly drink the nutrient solution, as if it couldn't feel the strange taste at all, a trace of sadness flashed in Yuli's eyes. Does it worth? Didn't I tell you that you just need to hold that muscle man back? With a heart full of doubts and confusion, Yuli frowned, his hands constantly moving to treat Zhuan Mao's injuries, while his mouth was not idle either, asking Zhuan Mao a barrage of questions unconsciously. The tone of his voice became a little stiff, and even mixed with a hint of anger that was difficult to conceal. This team is the one that has followed Yuli for the longest time. After more than 10 missions, they have fought side by side, lived and died together, and their relationship has become closer and closer. They are no longer as strange and restrained as they were at the beginning. Facing Yuli's questioning, Zhuan Mao simply replied, "That is a mission. A mission should be completed with all efforts. Completing the mission is my mission." Her eyes were cold and firm. Without the slightest wavering or hesitation, Yuli stared into her pupils, opened his mouth, but found that he had nothing to say. What else can he say? Zhuan Mao has lived in an orphanage controlled by Danzo since he was a child. He was selected at a very young age and received the most traditional and strict route training. For her, the concept of mission has been deeply rooted in her heart and has become an instinct and belief. How can it be easy for her to change this deep-rooted idea? It's not just Black Cat, the same goes for Old Pig and the black and white drugs in the team. They are all children who grew up in the route since childhood and were trained as reserve members of the route. Don't be fooled by Lao Zhu's big and strong appearance. He is actually just a teenager who just grew up a little too fast. Obeying orders and completing tasks are their lifelong beliefs. In order to achieve their goals, they will never back down even when faced with life and death challenges. Yuli didn't know whether this was a good thing or a bad thing, but he always felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. The route was good, but the longer he stayed there, the more Yuli missed the days with Jinu and Kushina. But some things can't be undone. Ugh, sighing. Yuli couldn't remember how many times she had mentioned this to Zhuan Mao, but she had her own persistence. Haha, I am the same. Feeling my right arm, which is still a little fragile. What right do I have to criticize others? Tearbite it, it's going to hurt. Taking the branch wrapped in cloth handed over by Yuli, Zhuan Mao's eyes were still as cold as ice, as if she was not facing her own seriously injured body, but an ordinary object. He bit the branch and slowly closed his eyes, his face calm as he faced the coming pain. At this moment, The blood spilled from the black cat's body had already coagulated into dark red lumps, forming a sharp contrast with her pale skin. As Yuli carefully tore open the blood-soaked cloth strips, the originally solid blood scabs seemed to have lost their support and instantly broke apart, with a steady stream of blood spilling out of the wound. A low moan came from Zuanmeo's mouth. She closed her eyes tightly and beads of sweat the size of beans kept rolling down her forehead. Although Yuli's movements were as gentle as possible, the situation was too bad, and she couldn't take care of everything. After painstakingly cutting away the necrotic flesh and blood tissue from the black cat's body, Yuli began to concentrate on performing healing techniques, trying to stimulate the regenerative ability of the black cat's cells in order to speed up the healing of the wound. However, black cat's injuries were too severe, and it was not easy to make her fully recover in a short period of time. Yuli could only do her best to repair black cat's damaged body bit by bit. The current environment is too simple and Yuli's own condition is not very good, so she can only suppress her injuries first. As for the rest, she needs to return to the camp and do other things. Chapter 74. The war is underway. After simply treating the injuries on black cat's body, Yuli reached out and gently wiped away the fine beads of sweat on his forehead. The black dog and the white dog, who had recovered some strength, immediately brought him some food. Yuli hurriedly took it and swallowed it without hesitation. He needed to quickly replenish the energy consumed in his body. After drinking all the water in the pot in one gulp, he slowly put away the empty pot. Catalyst 1.0, as its name suggests, can speed up the body's metabolism and contains high-intensity energy. It can make the heart beat at a high intensity, speed up blood flow, and extract a large amount of chakra in a short period of time. Because of this, Yu Lefeng has enough powerful chakra power to help teammates defeat the enemy. However, at this moment, after a series of fierce battles and providing emergency treatment to his companions, Yuli himself was actually in a relatively weak state and urgently needed some time to rest and recuperate. Turning to look at the side, I saw the black dog carefully putting drops of water into the black cat's already dry and cracked mouth. Cough. Cough. In vain. The black cat trembled, and the black dog's hand shook, and some water flowed into the black cat's nasal cavity, causing the black cat to cough. She had her eyes closed, but she opened them with difficulty. Her bloodshot eyes revealed deep fatigue and powerlessness. Even after receiving nutrient solution and Yuli's careful treatment, most of her wounds had gradually healed, but her body was still very weak. Yuli only treated the obvious serious injuries on black cat's body, but her body, which had just recovered, was still weak. The black cat is in very bad condition right now. The number of supply convoys we intercepted today is already quite impressive. I estimate that the defense capabilities of Iwagakure will be greatly enhanced at this moment. So in the short term, we must suspend all action plans. The most urgent thing is to hurry back to the camp and apply for a rest and adjustment period. As for the subsequent task arrangements, I will go to the teacher to redeploy them. As he spoke, Yuli took out the space scroll he had obtained from Hatabashi Banri and Yakuchi Ryu and handed it to Laozu. These are their spoils of war. Their mission was to destroy the logistical supplies of the Iwagakure village. Their mission has been completed, and these things actually belong to them at this time. The price of strategic materials is very high. Although Yuli is not short of money, the teacher's experiment is very short of money. No money? What kind of scientific research can we talk about? As a student of my teacher, I still have to consider Orochimaru. Yuli prepared to take his team members back to the camp for some adjustments. Although there must be many such transport teams for the Iwagakure village, there are definitely not many that can reach the level they are at today. Using this level of combat power to escort supplies would be a serious waste of combat power and a serious disregard for the lives of other ninjas. Yuli slowly raised his head and stared at the slightly rough cave wall above his head, his eyes gradually becoming blurred. At this moment, his thoughts were like a kite with a broken string, floating away to a distant place. I don't know how Minato and the others are doing on the battlefield. The intensity of the frontal battlefield is not lower than here. Minato and his men may not have it too easy. Damn it, Namikaze Mina. Just then, a slight noise caught Yuli's attention. Turning around, the smoke dissipated and Yuli was surprised to find that a small snow-white snake had appeared beside her. It blinked its red eyes, flicked its tongue at Yuli, and then spit out a small piece of paper from its mouth. Then, it gently rubbed Yuli's calf with its head, as if conveying some kind of message. Yuli was confused, but still reached out and gently stroked the little white snake's head. He carefully took the note and unfolded it. It contained a secret order from Orochimaru. After completing the mission, go to the training area immediately. Be sure to protect the new generation of ninjas and annihilate the incoming rock ninja assassination troops. Seeing this, Yuli couldn't help but fall silent after a long sigh. It seems that we won't be able to relax in the short term, although he wanted to go back and rest now. Since the teacher had given the order, he naturally vowed to complete it. He held the note tightly in his hand with a determined look in his eyes. Although he was a little distressed about not being able to rest, it was inevitable looking back. Yuli glanced at the still pale Black Cat, thought for a moment, and said to Lao Zu, "Lao Zu, take Black Cat back to the camp tomorrow morning to rest. Black Dog and White Dog, follow me to support the new generation. Wind, Bird, follow." Orders, yes. Seeing that Yuli had made up her mind, Lao Zu and Zhuan Mao stopped trying to persuade her as a member of the route. They know that obeying orders is their first priority. However, behind the mask, Zhuan Mao stared at Yuli with a hint of unwillingness in his eyes. Becoming a burden to the team was a fatal pain for her. She clenched her fists tightly, her nails digging deep into the flesh of her palms, and blood trickled down from between her fingers. "I can go back by myself. Let Lao Zu go with you." "No, I'm the captain. I have the final say." With a cold and determined look in her eyes, Yuli rejected Zhuan Mao's suggestion without hesitation. The battlefield was dangerous. If she was really allowed to go back alone, she would probably have to wait until the war was over to build a tomb for Zhuan Mao. "I'm sorry. I'm a burden to everyone." Seeing Yuli disagree, the guilt in Zhuan Mao's eyes increased. Facing the mission, not only could he not carry it out, but he also hindered his companions from carrying out the mission. He was really a waste. The night passed in a flash. The moon rose and set at dawn. A hazy mist covered the entire forest with a Black Cat on his back. Lao Zu nodded slightly to Yuli and the other three, then carefully groped his way towards the edge of the battlefield. He had to avoid the area where the fierce fighting was going on and return to the camp safely. At the same time, Yuli exchanged glances with the White Dog and the Black Dog, and led the team resolutely towards the battlefield. On the other side, on the front battlefield, the rumbling sound was deafening. The overall battle situation at this moment had not changed much compared to the beginning, but in some local areas, the battle situation had taken an unexpected turn. A silent demolition team and assassination squad were moving through the battlefield with solemn expressions. With a fearless look in their eyes, they took heavy steps and rushed straight towards the direction where the young Konoha ninja was among the 9 people. A man with an aged face and an unusually gloomy expression was the most aggressive. At this moment, he was in a state of near madness. Chapter 75 War is a Gamble. Originally, this demolition and killing team had 10 members, but it was not easy to cross the battlefield quickly on the way. A team of powerful Konoha Jonin blocked their way. One member of the team left the team voluntarily and went deep into the enemy camp alone to help everyone break through the siege. "Senior Jiro, we are still some distance away from the real battlefield. Please conserve your strength." Shaoto shouted anxiously. "HMPH, you don't need to teach me how to do this, kid." Jiro Noguchi's voice became hoarse due to excessive use of chakra. He completely ignored the loss of his own strength, shuttled back and forth on the battlefield, and wantonly displayed his astonishingly powerful explosive escape. All the Konoha ninjas who were caught in his gaze were blown into the air without exception. Senior Shaoto stared at Noguchi. Jiro, who was reckless and continued to exert his strength, and his heart was full of worry. As the leader of this assault and demolition team, he could not sit idly by while this experienced old predecessor adopted such a self-destructive attack method. At least, if he could take them back, he would even be willing to sacrifice himself, whether it is from a public or private perspective. As the captain of the current team and as a junior who had been taken care of by Jiro Noguchi, he did not want to see Jiro Noguchi like this. "Show. 2. This time, let me sacrifice my heart for the village. Phew. I'm tired. I don't want to move anymore. The future of the village is in the hands of you young people." Looking back, Jiro Noguchi forced a smile on his gloomy face. Shaoto was his most proud junior, and his ability was unquestionable. It's just that sometimes, this little guy is a little too emotional, not manly at all. "Boy, this time, let us old guys do it. You are still young and have a long way to go in the future." His eyes were still sinister, but Noguchi Jiro looked at Morita with memories. Morita was the same age as Yingshen, but he was more honest and sentimental than Yingshen. A child like him should not die on the battlefield. After exchanging a glance with a few old guys in the team, they all saw each other's determination. "So, let the ninja world feel the shock from the blast team. The war has been going on for 2 days. The location of Konoha's new generation in Iwagakure village has been roughly explored, and today is their battlefield. Hi, bang, bang bang rumbling, deafening explosions continue to sound on the battlefield, raising patches of scorched earth and dust. Each of these explosive ninjas who possess bloodline limits is extremely powerful, and even the weakest among them possesses terrifying combat power at the level of a special Jonin. For them, Demolition Team is not just a simple title, but also a supreme honor. At this moment, Wang Tu, who was fighting fiercely with Orochimaru, had a mysterious smile on his face. He knew that the attack team had already set off. Orochimaru, can you still keep your composure? Hoha, he spoke. His eyes intentionally or unintentionally looked towards the edge of the battlefield, where continuous explosions were heard one after another. However, Orochimaru remained calm and composed without changing his expression. He was seen holding the Kusanagi sword, swinging it up and down, splitting the lowest like flowing water and blocking the oncoming rock spear. There was also a faint smile in those vertical pupils that sparkled with golden light. He also has enough confidence in Konoha's ninjas. Moreover, at this critical moment, if either side wants to gain an advantage, it must see which side can be the first to make military achievements. Besides, it is not only their Iwagakure village that will send out a team to assassinate the new generation of ninjas. The camera turns and returns to the battlefield under the crazy attack of the Demolition Team. Without any regard for their own chakra consumption, this team quickly crossed a corner of the battlefield as easily as a hot and sharp knife cutting into butter, and rushed straight towards the direction where Minato and others were. But crossing the battlefield would eventually cause losses to the Demolition Team. At the same time, the defenders could not bear to see so many members being lost before completing the mission. When they completely crossed the battlefield, only 8 members of the Demolition Team were left, including Jiro Naguchi. But for them, oh, that's enough, they are just a new generation. Kushina, watch out. At the edge of the battlefield, after a long and fierce battle, Hinata Hisei had already used up all the arrows in his hand. Only after the battle is over and they return to the camp can they get new supplies. Therefore, Hinata Hisao made a quick decision and chose to use Gentle Fist to fight the enemy. At this moment, with the help of the inside of the Byakugan, she was shocked to find that a figure exuding a violent aura was approaching Hinata Kushina at an alarming speed. What's even more frightening is that as the distance gets closer, the violent aura emanating from that figure becomes stronger and stronger. After receiving the warning from Hinata Hisao, Kushina rushed forward without hesitation, but was still a bit too slow. Just heard a loud noise. Boom! A deafening roar sounded. Jiro Naguchi waved his fist and launched a powerful attack. A huge ball of red flame suddenly erupted behind Kushina. The raging flames instantly swept around and sparks flew everywhere. However, to Naguchi Jiro's slight surprise, Kushina narrowly avoided the attack. You dodged it? The corners of Naguchi Jiro's mouth slightly raised, without revealing too much disappointment. His face was sinister and indifferent. After all, although this attack did not hit the target, there were other people within the attack range just now, so it was not a complete loss. He secretly told himself not to panic, to keep his composure and wait patiently for the right opportunity. Ying Shen, don't worry, I will avenge you before Otto-san comes looking for you and your mother, Yingzi. I can finally come to accompany you. I'm sorry. I couldn't take good care of Ying Shen. Ming, I have prepared everything. Yingzi. I'm so tired. Finally, I can rest. Are you okay now? Not to mention the direction where Kushina and others are. This time, Konoha also sent out an assassination team to hunt down the new generation of Iwagakure village. This is a race in itself, so, who do you think can hold on? A gleam of light flashed in Orochimaru's eyes. War is a gamble. He doesn't like gambling, but he is never afraid of gambling. Wind, how long will it take? We're almost there. Everyone get ready. We're about to reach the new generation of Iwagakure village. Remember our goal, and fight quickly. Yes, this assassination team was formed by Anbu and Root ninjas. Until now, they have never appeared on the front battlefield. Their goal is the same as that of the Iwagakure's blasting and killing team, to kill the opponent's new generation with all their strength. The future is always what the village cares about. On the battlefield at the border of the land of grass, in the local area near the Iwagakure village, the new generation of Iwagakure are now working in small teams, relying on each other and fighting against the enemy together. Each team worked closely together, supporting each other and giving full play to the power of the team. They either use the terrain to set up ambushes or use ninjutsu skills to launch surprise attacks. War is a training for ninjas. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.